Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another show. Tonight, we've got a special guest. We're going to get her to introduce herself. I'm Nathan Kirkden. This is Gary Clarke. We are from Constitutional Movement Worldwide. We're going to speak to a lovely lady today who's done some absolutely amazing things. That's the only way I can describe it, really. You're going to have to hear it to believe it as well. Absolutely amazing, done amazing. So, if everybody will, please welcome Tracy Morris. Evening, Tracy. Would
Good
you please?
evening, Nathan.
Can you please just
Evening,
introduce?
Tracy.
Can you just introduce
Good evening,
yourself
Gary.
and tell people a bit about what you're going to be talking about tonight, please?
Good evening, everyone. A lot of you on here probably would know of me over the years with doing interviews back and forth with Gary, my good old lifelong friend for too many years, too many decades, Gary. Yeah, but too many years. You know, but they always say that when you'll meet someone and then many years later you'll meet them again and you'll never believe what that person you'd never believe that person would become what you became. And that was a believer of getting out there, opening your eyes, seeing what's out there in the real world. We're experiencing it, we're getting hit with it day in, day out. And for you to have your eyes as opened as we have is as massive to me, because Gary, you're fighting, you feel like you're fighting a losing battle over there, we feel like we're fighting a losing battle over here. But when it comes to it, all these years that we've been fighting these battles for transparency, for justice, the Good Friday Agreement over here in Northern Ireland was all about things being more open, people getting more justice for their loved ones, being unlawfully killed and that disappeared, go back how many years. And that was in 2002, that was all started to come about. Just after Geffen, just after we took the biggest paedophile ring down in the West Midlands, Gary, as you know, that had happened around the same time. He went on trial. The notorious Ivan Geffen, who was the famous lawyer who represented two of the Birmingham Six. And this man was a notorious paedophile. But when, after all these years of doing what we do, and having to do a lot of research and a lot of digging and a lot of dark digging, down some pretty dark holes to get to the truth, I believe that this man, who was the biggest paedophile trafficker of children across the West Midlands for 40 years, I believe that he was connected to the paedophile rings right across the UK, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland. And I do believe that. And I do now believe that he could have set the Birmingham Six up to make sure they stayed there for 17 years. He always knew who the real bombers were. He knew the real bombers were free. Because I believe, even back then, that this man was doing business with the very people whose kids he was defending in the court, trying to prove them innocent. This man goes back, I'd say, a good 50, 60 years, right across the West Midlands, right through to Northern Ireland. And I would believe that he was connected to Concora as well.
Well, not just that, he had a black book, didn't he, Tracy, with Savile, all these people, all the paedophiles that you hear about now, ladies and gentlemen. This Ivan Geffen, unfortunately, come from Hostel, where I was from, where Tracy lived for a while. That's when we became friends. But basically, he had a little black book that he kept on everybody who was part of this, what he was doing. Your Jimmy Saviles, your Stuart Halls, all these people.
Massive names and big Labour MP names, ones who were high up in Labour, and this man had funded Labour, the Labour Party, and handed massive donations to the Labour Party. And at one stage he tried to run for one of the seats. He tried to be a candidate. I ran as candidate, and I know he failed in that department to get a seat, but it didn't stop him you know, supporting them. It didn't stop him donating to them. And today, you know, to me, where those donations come from? All the money, the profit he was making from trafficking, you know, from trafficking these children across, you know, all these different counties, states, you name it, probably putting them in planes. Now, the reason why we got the connection with Jimmy Savile and Lord Jenner was because in 2015, when it all finally came out and we exposed Geffen and everybody else, a journalist contacted me, and I asked the journalist, could she get me a connection between Ivan Geffen and Jimmy Savile, and Ivan Geffen and Lord Jenner. And I remember her coming back to me, and it floored me. She says that Ivan Geffen was made head of the travellers camp in Birmingham in the early 70s by Ivan Geffen. That and there was a newspaper article with Ivan Geffen standing with Jimmy Savile, and the two of their arms in the air, like they were punching the air and smiling, and all these traveller kids around them, you know. And I thought, oh my God, you were even under the skin of the travellers back then. You even had control of them. And, you know, so we all know that the traveling community, especially back then in the 90s or 70s, the head of the travellers camp was a traveller.
Yep.
It was not Jimmy Savile
Exactly.
or any, it doesn't matter how famous you are or who you think you are, you know, you just do not get that type of privilege. But Jimmy Savile did. So that was the connection we found between Jimmy Savile and Ivan Geffen. So right back to the early 70s. So to me, he was in that little black book too. Then I asked to get the connection between Lord Jenner, because I believe that Lord Jenner, for some reason, my gut feeling was telling me he was connected. And there it becomes. Lord Jenner moved into the same street that Ivan Geffen lived on from the age of 13. And the two of them ended up going to school together, going to college together, going to university together. So they were this kind of buddies. That's how close these two were. So then you have Jenner abusing all these little boys all over the country, and then you have Geffen abusing all the little girls. He'd no interest in the little boys. Geffen was only interested in little girls. So where was he sending the little boys to? Because this man was taking 2 girls from one family, 2 boys from another family. You know, where were these boys being taken to be distracted? You know, was Lord Jenner being given hand to these boys? Because when I exposed them, and the police was in doing a statement in my house, and the police officer kept getting up and throwing up my bin, I had to ask him after about the 4th time of him throwing up. I says, could you tell me why you're being sick of my bin? Should that not be me throwing up? And you consoling me? Like, what's going on here? And he said he had to, after the trial, he had to leave for 6 months and had to have daily counselling. This was the top police liaison officer. He said that him, himself, and a team of police from Walsall Police Station had been doing surveillance outside Ivan Geffen's offices for 2 years, sleeping in their cars overnight, sleeping down at the bottom of the entries, whatever was close to his offices, letting on to sleep as homeless people out there, because they thought he was trafficking prostitutes. They were trying to catch him trafficking prostitutes. But he was being sick of my bin, because for those 2 years that they were in the back of cars waiting to try and get this trafficking thing that they thought was going on with him, they couldn't believe that he was trafficking kids. And whilst they were doing surveillance, he was up putting all sorts of pornography onto his computers. He lived in his office. He had an apartment out in Solihull, but he was never there. he never ever went near his apartment, and very, very rarely, very, very rarely. That was probably because he was afraid. You know, maybe too many people knew where he privately lived, and maybe being staying in the offices kept him safe. You know, he was a smart man, but he did a lot of trafficking, a lot of thing through his office work. And I mean, this was a solicitor who was supposed to help single parent families who couldn't find a solicitor to help them in the area where they had council problems, tax, you know, council tax issues, issues with the landlords who who weren't, you know, putting for serious disrepairs to their properties. And he was coming along and he was getting these landlords and taking them to court and getting their knuckles rattled and getting the families compensation and telling the moms and dads when the compensation come through to go out and enjoy themselves, go and enjoy the money and, you know, spend a little bit on themselves. And him and his wife would take their children out. And these families were doing that. And, you know, and they trusted the solicitor, and it was just certain things that he was saying, he would have said that startled me when he came to my door, that made me click right away, this man's not right in head. But how these people didn't click to me to this day is beyond me, because I still can't get my head around it. And remember, I had moved to Walsall. I was living there, guy, what, 2 years? I had built a whole new life for myself. You know that. I was about to do a project with a top man in the environmental health offices in the civic centre, who asked me to do a project with him and to work with single parent families right across Walsall and to give back feedback on their, you know, how they were living, how disadvantaged they were, you know, the way their homes were, all that. And so I had a good, bright career future ahead of me. I had no need for my whole world to come down collapsing overnight, and you know that. You look what you've built me. You've built me the fencing. You've built me. You've built me the big 6-foot gates where you fucking like Fort Knox, you know. But that was because we felt that we were going to be there for a long time. You know that. And the night Geffen rapped my door was my whole world turned upside down. And maybe I'd say, till this day, it sort of way is that way, even though it's sort of way upside down but stable, if that makes sense. Because this man turned my life upside down the night he came to my door. The fight and the injustices that I've had since, other families have had since, you know it. The things that we were forced to do, our hands that we were forced to do in order to protect ourselves, to protect our kids, to expose these paedophile rings that were right across the UK, right across Northern Ireland. You know, even back then, that's when we come back and took down the IRA paedophile ring, which will not name any names on here. It's not what this is about. You know, I'll have my say in them one day. They'll get their platform. But right through to now, right through to Karina. Karina was murdered, and her death, as we all now know, had been well covered up by the police. It's still happening. This coroner, who is connected, seriously connected, to covering up people's loved ones' deaths. This coroner, like, there has to be some serious digging into him. There has to be some serious investigations into him.
Well,
And
this is the branches to the tree, because a lot of people don't realise a lot of the police constables are masons. You've got coroners are, doctors are. They're all in the same club.
well, do you know what, Nathan? They can all be in the same club, but they can all even be, you know, they can all be in bed together 7 nights a week for all I care. But they're all not as intelligent as what they think they are. These people go out of their way too quickly to cover things up, that they make so many mistakes along the way. But there's only people like yourselves and me, myself, who find out, well, who see those mistakes. And we only see those mistakes because we were forced, how long ago, to fight this kind of craziness, these kind of people, these kind of cases.
This is,
You
I was
know, so
actually saying about this the other day. It's like if we could get the majority of the people who are fighting for children to actually come on board with what we've been doing over these many years and the way we've been doing it, we would dent this in one foul swoop.
we
I
all
mean,
know that. I mean, yeah.
tell them, right, the MO that Geffen did with you, it was a tried and tested MO, and it worked that many times. He thought he was home and dry, but obviously you was a bit more clued up than most because you was doing what you was doing, same as I am back then. So he couldn't pull the wool over your eyes now. But he used to do it like saying, I'll have the children, I'll take the children away, and you have a weekend with your fella or whatever. That's how he uses MO, wasn't he?
It was when, I think what happened was when he pulled out my file. I was going through like a divorce, your essay, where you're getting the last signature we sign before it goes to the courts. And when you're doing that, when your final divorce thing's being signed, it has to go through the solicitor who owns the actual law firm. He's the one who has to sign off on it. So when my papers came to him, because it was a female solicitor was dealing with my divorce, and as I said, in the May, I went down to sign my divorce papers, and she told me my file had gone missing. And we never thought nothing of it. It's a solicitor's office, you know, things can go missing. Somebody could have left my file with another file in front of it, not realizing, you know, it'll turn up. A few days later, she tells me to come back down. She found it, and I says, where was it? And she says it was actually back in the same place that it should have been in the first place. Didn't think nothing of it again. Then a few weeks later, Geffen raps my front door on a Monday night, 9 p.m. at night, and I'll never ever forget it. Like, and he said, 19th of June, he said, when he rapped the door, when I went down to sign for my paperwork had been found. I was in the waiting area, and there was a fella and a girl sitting there waiting to go in to see their own solicitor. And Ivan Geffen comes out the door. An old man comes out the door in a suit, and he doesn't look at anybody. He looks straight out the window and keeps looking out the window. And the girl said to her partner, "That's Ivan Geffen." So even at her pointing him out, I still didn't take any notice because he wasn't no importance to me. I was going into the solicitor who I knew was dealing with my stuff, so that was good enough for me. So when he came to my door that night and he rapped the door, my kids had just went to bed. My friend and her partner were sitting in my living room. I just made them all us a cup of tea. He rapped the door. I went out and he opened the door. And I looked at him and I was like, yeah. And he didn't know me. Because he says, could I speak to Miss Perry? Because that's what I changed my name to by depot then, to escape what we had escaped in Northern Ireland. And I looked at him and I thought, I'm Miss Perry. Who are you? Oh, I'm Ivan Geffen. He says, I'm the solicitor who's representing your divorce. And I was like, right, okay, yeah. I thought he was coming to tell me that my mum was dead, my dad was dead, somebody in my family had been murdered. You know, the fuck's the solicitor doing rapping my door at 9 o'clock at night? You know, he may own the firm, but he's nothing to do with me. So he said he had a little bit of green paper in his hand and with red writing, with red barrow pen writing on it. He was able to tell me that I was about to become divorced. He was able to tell me that I was a victim of rape. He was able to, at this stage, we didn't know about my daughter had been sexually abused because that hadn't came about yet. Her bowels collapsed shortly after that. He knew about the rape, so he must have thought I was a vulnerable single mother. Little did he know that I've been working over there for 2 years, Guy, rebuilt my life, you know it. Was having an amazing life. I was working with some amazing top people. I worked in the refuge with all the vulnerable families. And the officer who came out to take the statement about Geffen was the liaison officer who I worked with in the refuge, who came out dressed as a plumber to take the statement from my property when I actually rang about Geffen being in my home. And that was Chris Miller from the Environmental Health, who I rang because I didn't trust anybody in the police. This was a lawyer who I didn't know at the time represented the Birmingham Six. I had no fucking clue who he was. This was a lawyer who was never out of a cop shop. Who the hell could I ring in Walsall police station and say that I think there's a solicitor came to my house and I think he's a paedophile? Like, seriously, God knows what connections he had to that cop shop. So I had to be careful of who I was even contacting and even coming forward about somebody like this. Little did I know that within 5 weeks, it became the biggest can of worms opened in the West Midlands in over 40 years. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Then it was the CID who I helped him find all his properties, because when he rapped my door that night and I brought him into my kitchen, I made him a cup of coffee. He thought I was stupid, so I acted stupid. He said that him and his wife took kids to the Lake District. I asked him what the Lake District was, because there is none in Northern Ireland. So he obviously thought, well, you know, he thought I was thick, so why not act thick? He told me that there was, because I knew Lake Districts were all over England, and it was like fighting a needle in a haystack. Him saying a Lake District, you know, especially over there. And he says, oh, my cousin and his wife have a beautiful, beautiful place down just out near Glasgow. He says, and I went, bingo, I know where the Lake District is, you're taking them. I asked him where else he took him. He says the adventure parks. I asked him where else he took him. It ended up he'd 6 properties. The Little House in the Woods. Now, there's a story here on the Little House in the Woods. And when he was acquitted, because it was all covered up, and some of the victims talked about the Little House in the Woods. And I was so floored, because I know all about the Little House in the Woods. And when he came to my house, he said, we take 2 girls from one family, we take 2 boys from another family. He says, we prefer boys in combat shorts and we prefer girls in skirts. And I says, oh yeah, why's that? He said, because when they're in the river playing, he says they tend to get wet. And because there's nowhere for them to get dried and changed, they have to go behind a tree. And some girls, little girls, tend to get embarrassed. So it's just better that they bring a change of pants and wear a dress. So I thought, mate, I'm fucking coming for your motherfucking ass. You pedo fuck. You're abusing little kids, and your days of fucking touching or putting your hands on another child is fucking over. And I remember I never slept all night. I had to get more information out of him. So I got as much as I could out of him. I got rid of him. I was floored. I was fucking floored, Gary, because you know me. I was an outgoing, bubbly person. I was a real people's person. You know, I was my whole future was really going boom. He didn't know this. He read my file and thought I was a vulnerable single mother, you know, locked away, isolated in a house, afraid for my life. Well, you know, so I led him to believe what he had visualized me to be, because that's what I had to do in order to entrap him, to get him. So I remember I never slept all night, and the next morning I rang Chris Miller, who was the man who I was supposed to work alongside. He was the head man of the environmental health in the Civic Centre. Chris was disgusted. He was like, Tracy, I always knew there was something about him. I couldn't put my finger on it. I am sick to my stomach. This man's a dangerous man. He has been for a long time. But then nobody had even still told me that he was the solicitor who represented the Birmingham Six. I was still fucking totally oblivious to who this man was. And then he says, look, there's a man going to come out dressed as a plumber, because I wasn't contacting any police. And he came out, and it was John Batsford, who was the liaison officer who worked in the refuge. And I was like, holy fuck, John, thank God it's you, you know. So I was relieved a wee bit more that I knew it was okay who I was speaking to. He came into my kitchen. He was there for 4 hours. He got up, I don't know, many times, up to 4 times, and within the space of an hour, the first hour, and was throwing up my bin. And I had to keep asking him, why the fuck are you throwing up my bin? Should that not be me? And he was like, Tracy. So when he told me the story about the incident with the entries, and I could see why he was thrown up in the bin, because they were sitting in cars, you know, doing all-nighters, thinking this man was trying to catch him bringing prostitutes through, you know, and it was nothing to do with prostitutes. It was children for all these years. And when he went away the next day, 2 members of CID from Birmingham, CID came, Heather and Gareth. Now, at that time, they were just partners. They were just like working partners, CID, child protection. They came into my house. They bugged my phone for him ringing because he wanted to record him saying he wanted, could he bring the kids out? We had to set things up. Aislena took the German measles, things like that. And thank God, because that was able to keep us all protected, where he couldn't get back to the house, where he was eager to come back to the house and meet the girls. And there's no way was he meeting my kids. Then I found out that the CID had went to him into his office and pulled him. And he didn't deny. He didn't deny coming to my house. He didn't deny asking to take my kids out. He didn't deny that he'd been doing this for the last 10 years, what he was saying to me. And there was things like he was saying, you know, I have 2 daughters, I have 2 sons, I have a daughter and 2 sons. I think he said he'd stepdaughters, and he'd something like 27 grandchildren and great grandchildren. And I thought, well, why aren't you spending time with your Emmons? Why aren't you taking your own grandkids out? You know, when you and your wife get the time, why aren't you taking your own loved ones out? It turned out, you know, when it all came out, that his own kids hadn't spoke to him in years. That his grandkids never ever got to meet him. Some of them had never met him. Then during the trial, one of his daughters was so distraught, she came forward and gave a statement about him abusing her. So this all didn't go into the media coverage. The Guardian and all these news reporters didn't report this, didn't report all that, but that all happened. Believe you me, that was all in between the trial. They made it out that I didn't turn up to the trial. I was there. I was damn well there. I was down underneath the courts in a room where a barrister came down to me, where they had me all day. They even took me out for lunch and brought me back. So it was in the afternoon the barrister came down, and they had my flight all booked for 5:30 that night to come back to Northern Ireland. So they had it all planned. When you think of it all now, they had it all planned. They knew Geffen was walking. They already knew. And the reason why Geffen walked was because when they took Geffen down, he had abused hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of little girls over the period of 40 years. All little girls. Hundreds and hundreds of these little girls. A lot of them, I'd say, be dead today because they didn't get their justice like they should have. Then you've got the likes of these top CID who bring all this evidence, and I mean tons of this evidence, before the prosecution service. And then you find out through his acquittal, you find out through the Guardian, things like this, where Geffen, you find out that not only was he acquitted, all his victims were made out to look like liars, and that they were all making it all up. It stated in one of the articles that the high-profile key witness didn't turn up. That was me. I fucking did turn up. Check your financial records. You've paid for my flight. You've sent a bus full of top CID in plain clothes to Birmingham Airport to pick me up and drove me to Leicester Crown Court. I've never seen Leicester Crown Court in my life, but I can assure you there's loads of steps up into it. But when you go on round the side of it, you go down and it brings you down round the back of it, and then it brings you under big shutters and it brings you into the back of the courts. And then when you're brought out and you're brought through the doors, there's a corridor, and when you go down the corridor on the right, that's where they had me in the room. Then to bring you out of that room, they bring you on up, and there's a set of stairs, and you go up these stairs, and when you get up the stairs, boom, there was the court. The fucking courtroom is in the corner. And outside the courtroom, Geffen was sitting on a bench eating sandwiches. That's what I seen the day I went and turned up at Leicester Crown Court to put Geffen away. They kept me downstairs. They told me there was a triple murder trial going on as well. So the media from all over the world were there, and the media, as well as with victims, were running about the Leicester Crown Courts looking me, the person who blew the whistle, the person who took him down, the person who wasn't afraid to go after them. And so they were telling me, so for me to make sure that you're giving your evidence and you're not interacting with these victims, you know, so that this trial could collapse, and you know what they tell you, all the bullshit of the day. They came down, a barrister came down and took my statement, took my evidence from downstairs in that room. Back then, I wouldn't have been as clued up in the law as what I am now. And I didn't know that I had to be in that witness box before any evidence was accepted. And when it was all over, I got a phone call a couple of weeks later from Heather McDougall, once again, telling me that Ivan Geffen was found guilty. She says the reason why he wasn't going to jail is because he'd only 2 years to live. Bollocks, he lived for a further 13 years. She says that his solicitor's office was closed down and he was never allowed to practice again or work with anybody under the age of 18. And that was all lies as well, because I believe he did open another firm under another name. He probably didn't run it as much himself this time around because he couldn't do trafficking through it. You know, that was his biggest wakey, you know, coffee in the mornings. You know, that was his biggest, that's what he got up for in the mornings. It wasn't about going out there and helping people with their civil rights and people who are innocent, proving their innocence. It was about grooming all these families so he could go back and have their children. And he would have turned up at families when he wasn't supposed to. He would have turned up unannounced and then just would have put them on the spot, you know, to take their children out. And these families thought that was really awful nice of them to do so, and away they went off with their children. You know, each to their own. I just don't understand how a solicitor was able to have that kind of bond with families, you know. But moving on from him and back in them days, it makes me believe that Geffen carried his work over to Northern Ireland even back then. We just didn't see it back then. You would never have linked it together, linked it to Northern Ireland, because we thought there was conflict there between Geffen and Sinn Féin, because Sinn Féin told me there was. Sinn Féin told me that they were looking him for over 20 years to put one in the back of his head. That was exact words from a member of Sinn Féin when they met with me. And it was the two members of CID when they came to my house. They asked me, did I know who Geffen was? And I says no. And then they proceeded to tell me who he was. They started to begin to tell me he was the solicitor who represented the Birmingham Six. So I was like, what? So even back then, I still wouldn't have put it together today that he was connected to Northern Ireland. And because of what we know today, and because of the work we've done, and because of the connections that we've made, I mean, look at making the connection between Geffen and Jimmy Savile, and Geffen and Lord Jenner. Would you have ever thought those three were connected?
I don't know, Jenna, yes. I wouldn't know about the other one.
You know, but Geffen, Ivan Geffen, having those connections with Jimmy Savile and Lord Jenner, you know, and the big connections with the Labour Party. And when you go into his whole history, he just idolized Labour. And when you think over the last 15 years, how many Labour politicians did it come out about them abusing, being child abusers, paedophiles?
Over, I think there's over 100 now. Labour MPs in total in the last, I think it's 15 to 20 years that have been proven to have taken part or covered up grooming gangs. It's epidemic. You know what I mean? That's why they love Labour so much.
You know, Nathan, is this why all the big donations were going into Labour so much from the likes of Ivan Geffen, because he was making so much money on the profiteering out of these little children? I mean, this man had garden parties at his own house where he had clients bring their little girls to the tea party, and they used to line up with their kids.
This is another reason why I say all donations to any political party or any MP or anything like that should be fully open, transparent and investigated, and should have a full spreadsheet of where the money goes and everything, because it's a personal opinion of mine. It is backed up with some facts, but I don't think all these donations are donations. I think they're backhanders.
20 odd years later, Nathan, it's got worse than what it was 20 years ago, right? 20 years fast forward. Look at it now today. It's 100 times worse than what it was even back then. At least back then, we had a bit of a say in certain things, you know, and then as the years went on, we started to lose the rest of what we thought our civil rights and liberties we still stood. We all know that, because we've been fighting it. We've been fighting what we now know has been removed from us all these years. So we've been fighting it long enough now.
Mapped out just over 200 years of their subversion.
Well, you know, then you've got and then you've got these I believe these corners being brought in, being these I don't know I know the name for them, but they're being made corners when they shouldn't be made corners, because I believe a corner has to be somebody who's had a lot of years experience in the courts, and that's in the junior courts, senior courts, you know, as a junior barrister, senior barrister, you know, right up the ladder.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, most coroners they have a legal background. They have to have a legal background.
Yes, well, this one, I mean,
how to put evidence, or they have to be legally trained because of putting evidence towards the court and stuff like that.
Well, you know, I mean, that's. I think we all get the gist of what they're supposed to have, right? This is what I'm saying. This is where it gets more disturbing for me. There's not been very many corners in Northern Ireland who were brought in as young corners. Now, John Leckie was brought in as a young corner, you know, back here in Northern Ireland, way back when troubles, things, shootings, murders were all still going on, all that there. And, you know, we always believed he was a good corner. You know, was he a good corner? Then we don't know why he was brought in. You know, did he rightfully, you know, work his ass off in order to be faithfully, you know, entitled to that post? But McCriskin, he wasn't. McCriskin was hadn't a clue. McCriskin didn't even have enough cases in order to pay his mortgage some months. So McCriskin was literally a nobody, and he had no ties or connections in order to be able to be given big cases. He had to prove himself over and over again in order to even get a case. So McCriskin was right up the street. I mean, how did they bring this man in who has been at the forefront of signing documents now with families after families, and you know, refusing to allow them to have their inquest into their kids' deaths, believing the families believing that their loved ones has had things happen to them, you know, suicides covered up, you know, certain things about their death covered up. And I do know of 3 other families who have successfully took McCriskin to JR at the High Courts. I think one's already been successful, 1 or 2, and I think the other one is in the process of is live at the minute in the courts. And last week I went and I signed my legal aid forms to get them in to be the fourth or fifth person, whatever, to take him to JR. Now, that's the main thing for this tonight, which I'm hoping to get a lot of families. First of all, I'm hoping that people within your movement can get to follow, what's going on here, because this coroner, as I always said, he'd covered up my daughter's death. He'd covered up everything about her. He blocked everything from happening, even an inquest, which I am lawfully entitled to. He did try to everything in his power. He wouldn't interact with me. He wouldn't even meet with me. And I always said that, and I said this to you, Gary, I think about 3 years ago, Gary, I have to sit back and wait for this man to strike again and again, didn't I? Before I'm actually going to be able to come at him. And
Well, the big red flag for me in your case, Tracy, is when they wouldn't let you see Karina's body. I mean, okay, she's possibly committed suicide, but it's not like she's been in a massive car crash and, her face is unrecognisable. Yeah, okay, she committed suicide, so I can't see why they stopped you seeing the body. It just doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't. It's a big red flag.
Because I know, because now was getting the clothes with the Rickus Marcus on, and with which she shouldn't have been on her clothes. They would have knew I knew that my child had been dead for hours. They had told me that she had only been found in the last 90 minutes of the police coming to my house. So if I had demanded that they took me down to see her body, I would have seen that her body was black, and I would have knew that my child had been dead for hours. They knew I wasn't stupid, Gary. So they did everything in their power to make sure I never seen that body before it was embalmed. So they, remember these are people who have been used to getting away with this for many decades. Now, they would have got away with Karina's murder had they not have handed my daughter the clothes that they killed her in, thinking she would bin them. That was the biggest mistake they made, because the night that did that, my daughter was dead across my window in her coffin. The first night of her coming home. One of the members of staff, Regina Celli, she was pacing up and down. She was up and down my dining room. She was, smoking like hell. And I was watching her and I kept thinking, why is she pacing the floor for? Why is she so agitated about? She must have been waiting on my daughter going out and putting those garments in the bin.
Quite
because
possibly.
they smelt the death. They really smelt really horrific. But my daughter brought them home and washed them. But even though she washed them, the Ricus Marcus was still embedded and it was still all through them, which we know because that's what I was arrested over, exposing that. And
So you're not allowed to question.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
That's the thing. They would have got away. But you're not allowed to question these people. This is what they hate. They hate questions.
Well,
And
the thing there was they messed up themselves, because at the beginning, in the April when Karina died, the following month, a police officer came out to my house and sat in my living room and told me that the coroner had sent him, Joe McCriskin.
Okay.
And it told him to tell me that he was holding an inquest into Karina's death, and for me to go and seek legal advice or whatever he wanted me to do, and that he would be in touch with a date. So I was like, glad to hear it, thank you very much. It was good to hear. It was just a month after Karina had died, where me, I'm still thinking she committed suicide. So I just was glad that this inquest was going to take place. So I decided that I would gather up the evidence instead of asking the solicitor to do it, because I knew by me gathering up the evidence, me, Nathan, I would gather up every shred. I'd leave no stone unturned. So
see, they hate people like us because we're meticulous and we're methodical in what we do. It's their worst nightmare.
I fell over that, stumbled over that accidentally by catching on that they were behind my daughter's death. And that was completely accidental, because when I went down in the June and I trying to gather information from the hostel, they kept coming out the gate and they kept telling me that the manager was the one who owned the Morning Star Hotel, Hostel, Wet Hostel, and that I was having to contact him, was contacting him, he wasn't getting back to me. Then I was leaving it for a week, then I was going down again, they were doing the same thing again. And then the third time I went down, I was getting pissed off and I was like, what the fuck's going on here? There's something not right. And then the next thing, I was told that the coroner had sent out a letter saying that there wasn't going to be an inquest in that September. And I was like, what the fuck's going on here? So when I was gathering up the evidence, they continued. Regina Celli wouldn't have any interactions with me whatsoever. So I decided to go down and I decided to expose them when this Rickus Marcus, these garments was found. My daughter, 6 months later, my daughter was on a private page messenger thing group, and she had mailed my son Aaron and said, I still have the clothes she died in. And Aaron says, Mum, she says she still has the clothes Karina died in. And I says, what the fuck do you mean clothes Karina died in? The only people should have clothes Karina died in should be the coroner or whoever, wherever the fuck her scarf is, where she apparently hung herself, or everything else. So why is that them those garments separated from the rest of the materials that they have had, supposed to have belonged to her? So I said, tell her to meet me then. So when she met me, I was so floored. I was so shocked. I just seen the Rickus Marcus all over them, and I thought, oh my God, my fucking child wasn't hanging for no 5 hours. My child was lying flat on her back for 5 hours. She wasn't hanging. Something's not fucking right here. The bottoms, the jammy bottoms, were white fleecy jammy bottoms. She wouldn't have wore fleecy jammy bottoms. She hated fleecy bottoms. She hated them. She hated the material. She hated the feel of them on her skin. They didn't know that. So her underwear was spotless clean, but her top and her bra was all covered in Rickus Marcus. But her bottoms weren't. And I knew that her bottoms had been changed. I knew, even though that stuff had been washed, I knew that those bottoms, because there wasn't a drop of Rickus Marcus on her bottoms or her pants, just the 2 tops. They obviously didn't think we could read autopsy reports. Guy, we got a lot of intelligent people out there, and a lot of them are highly qualified nurses and have been nurses for the best part of 30, 40 years, and can read many autopsies. So that wasn't going to be a problem. But they wouldn't give me any reports. They wouldn't give me anything. I had to fight for everything off them. It was only when that started to come out, the Rickus Marcus, and seeing all that, it was only in October when that all came out, and I done the exposure. Nobody would answer to me. Nobody would answer no questions. So I went down and done the exposure outside the front of their building, and we had only left it about 15 seconds, get into my car, and the police came flying up the lane. There was about 15 jeeps. They were flying like the wind. It was like, what the fuck? I thought they were going up to raid somebody's house. I could not believe it when I seen them flying up the lane of this hostel. I was like, hold on here. Something's not fucking right. So I says, listen, get out of here. Get to secret destination, safe destination, because they've removed the live. The exposure that I did had gone. They'd removed it. But our mistake for making it public and recording it publicly before we should have done it with friends first before we put it out. So we went to a safe house, and as you know, I did it again. Did the big exposure that night, exposed the clothes, everything, showed the whole world what was going on, and 1:30 that morning, bang, 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 the police near putting my door in, come and arrest me. And they arrest me, and they release me as quick as they arrest me, because they couldn't wait to get me back out of the police station. And I was good enough for me. The second time, they kept me there all night, and I should never even been arrested in the first place. But they tried to have charges brought on me, harassment charges, and I had kept bail conditions in place until I went to court. But I fought that the whole way through the courts. They tried to make all sorts of threats to me. The police were constantly coming out and banging on my door, making all sorts of threats. They were coming out with social services. I was constantly chasing them, fuck down my path, down the street. You know, I was not only chasing them out of my street, I was getting their badge numbers and finding out that it was detective CIDs in my street, at my door, at all hours of the night, in constable uniforms, police uniforms, with their badge numbers that didn't even exist.
Yeah.
And I accidentally got their details when one of them fucked up and put it like that. And he was caught. He was a CID officer, and he did an emergency 999 call into the fucking police, into the saying, oh, to do a welfare check, send to do a welfare check on my kids. And when we done the 101 the next day to find out where it came from, they says the call came in from a member of staff. And I was like, a member of staff? Are you on about a member of staff within the police? He says, I can't tell you nothing other than it states here from a member of staff. And when I got the so-called police officer's real name and badge number, the 101 call handler gave me his mobile number, his BlackBerry. So we called it, and it said, welcome to the voicemail of Detective CID Larkin, Grosvenor Road Police Station. Please leave a message after the tone. And I was just like, well, Detective CID Larkin. I says, Tracy Morris here of such and such, an address. I says, you can give me a wee call back, I says, and tell me what the fuck you're doing at my door in a policeman's uniform, in a constable's uniform. I says, and then I'm finding out the next day you're actually a detective, CID. Should you not have been coming to my door in a suit and tie? And I said, so I would appreciate a call back, but go ahead.
If you send me that, Gary, I'll put it up quick.
Yeah, that's Karina. That was Karina. Yeah. And I mean, these people who, were coming at me were working well with social services. When social services say jump, they say hi. There's only certain police officers who work with them. There's other police officers out there where I was harassed for maybe two years solid after Karina's death, because I was standing up to them, because I wouldn't bow down to them. They asked me to do an undertaking in the courts when they had me charged with harassment because of Regina Shelley Hostel, and I refused. I said, I'm signing no undertaking. I says, bring me into the court. I'm challenging their motherfucking asses. I says, bring me before the judge. So it ended up the judge pulled the plug and brought me into the court and said, Miss Marsh, you should never have been arrested. You should never have been charged. You should never have been brought before these courts. She says, I just want you to make you aware of that. She says, this should never have happened. And I went, that's nice to know, Your Honour. I says, but I'd just like to make you aware that when I leave these courts today, I will continue the campaign, I says, for the justice, for the truth of what happened to my daughter. I says, and I'm not going to stop. And she says, Miss Marsh, I wish you all the luck in the world with your campaign. You're free to go. So these people who had tried to wear me down, come to my door, police at all hours of the night, when you're on bail conditions, there are harassment charges against you, all sorts of shit against you, and they keep coming. I even had Inspector Tinsley. I even had the privilege of being chased by the inspector. Inspector Tinsley. I'd say he was more from Woodburn, Lisburn. But I had the privilege of getting chased by him. He gave me a good chase. but I didn't give up the vehicle. He wasn't getting the vehicle. I flew it into the driveway, and he wasn't too happy. He was had the door open, had me by the arm, and I was like, "What the hell are you at?" You know, he was furious. He was furious that he didn't get me on the road. But these people were waiting on me, you know, on the day of court, because they must have knew the judge was pulling the plug. They must have knew that none of the charges were sticking, that the case was being dismissed. So Tinsley was trying to get me arrested before I got to the courts, so that they could keep me on bail all summer,
This
so
is
that Regina would
actually
be out of hospital.
this is a regular occurrence. I've dealt with it a lot myself. I think Gary has. Many people I've dealt with has as well. There is a lot of psychological mind games that go on to stop you bringing a prosecution or to
Yeah.
wear you down in a prosecution that is
Come
actually
on,
done by
Nathan.
the
But
people meant to be investigating it.
yes, but listen, Nathan, it's not that, right? They're not sending out the fucking normal community cops here. We're having inspectors chase us. A fucking inspector? Seriously? Sitting at the corner of your street, waiting on it to strike? They chase you? They get bang you up? So that went right up the ranks to the inspectors. When my daughter died and all the cover up went on, and because I was saying it how it was, I didn't give a shit whether I had the evidence or not. You know, we had more than enough evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt there was seriously something not right, and the cover up continued. Now, I would have never, ever, ever got the evidence of the statements from the staff members if they hadn't charged me with harassment. So it can come as a good thing, because it can get you full disclosure stuff that you wouldn't get if they hadn't have charged me with harassment. So by charging me with harassment actually benefited my case, in order for me to be able to move it forward and be able to get any kind of inquest.
Well, I
Now,
think
I have a fair way to go,
this is what
but
a lot of people got to realise. It's like what you went through, most people go through, but not as much intensity and as big it is. Obviously, that people got to realise what you was bringing down and bringing light to some other cases. But this is where people have got to remember. It's like it's about being prepared in your mind before you go into this, so you carry it through. Because a lot of people, it is designed, the whole system is designed to break you down mentally. So you
yeah,
don't win these cases, and people have got to start to
yeah.
really push themselves and push forward this. Because if you do push, and you are consistent and you're constant, you do
Well,
go and you do get it.
well, they have, because they actually brought me back out of retirement in the legal sector, because for the past 18 months, I have been fighting JRs against them in the high courts. I've had to self-present my own cases. I've had to fight a whole team of them, a whole team in the council, their whole legal team. And I've had to do it single-handedly by advocating my son's case to JR, advocating my own case to JR. And I was about to advocate it back to another JR before the High Courts for Daniel. Only the Human Rights Commissioner stepped in, and they want to take Daniel's case to the High Court. So it's the last couple of years, believe you me, Nathan. They may not have been coming to my door in their police uniforms and stalking and tormenting, but they have tried to torment me and the family in other ways over the last couple of years. Now, that's not what I'm here to talk about tonight, because that's definitely another night show that definitely needs to be spoke about, because half of the people don't have a clue where I am today, why I'm here today, what position I'm in today, and why I am fighting a fucking army of them still out there single-handedly. But it's only now that I've been able to bring things forward for the sake of Karina's case. For starters, I needed to be in a more mentally stable place.
2 seconds,
In
Trace.
order,
No, I've sent you Karina's picture, so I'll put it up for her. So while I was talking about her, people can see, you know, put a face to who she's talking about.
Literally just waiting for my phone to charge now so I can turn it on to transfer it.
well, Karina, I mean, everybody knew, half of Belfast knew Karina. Karina was so known and well loved. She didn't have any enemies at all. I don't really want to go into too much of the story on Karina and how it came about, you know, where it led her to and where it led her to her death. But I
Just
mean,
do what you're comfortable with, Tracy. Don't really
it's
more.
like it was bad enough of what happened to her, to find out that her death was covered up, and then to find out the deaths that these people were going to in order to shut me up, to shut the whole thing down, to protect people who are high up there. Like, these people are fucking high up. These aren't little muppets running about that these people are protecting. They don't protect the little monkeys. It's the organ grinders they're protecting. They always will. They always have. They always will. We've been getting it for many years, but this McCriskin, to me, has been getting away with this long before Karina's death came about, where I challenged him. Long before other deaths have came about. Now, I don't know if you know much, Nathan, about we know Donahue death here in Northern Ireland.
A tiny little bit. I ain't really been a time to really look into a lot of things, to be honest.
Well,
'cause
he's
I've been busy
connected
with
to
my
that.
cases.
He's connected to the cover up of that. Not only the cover up of that, they have signed off PII certificates on this kid to make sure this kid's death is never ever revealed what happened to him. I mean, here's Karina. Yeah, right. Karina was killed on her 27th, just not long after her 27th. She was 27th in February, and she was murdered in the April. For the first 6 months, as we said, we thought she had committed suicide until there was evidence handed to us that it was definitely foul play, and a lot more things went on. So Karina's death isn't the only death into this Regina Celli. There was 18 other deaths before my child was killed in this place. So this is what I also want to know about McCriskin. How many more deaths was he connected to in Regina Celli? Was he coroner to all those deaths that was carried out in that place? Was he the coroner? Was he handled all those cases? How many more cases has he? How many more cases has he had in his hands, in full control of, since Karina's death? Since Noah's death. Like, we know Donahue went out on his bike and never come back. He was found apparently 6 days later in a storm drain. The police messed up straight away on the very first public outspoken that the speech that they done on that the night Noah was found. They said that he was found in a storm drain, and the reason why he drowned was because of high tides. Now, if you can check back, do your research in this, which we all know this. Back in March 2020, when just before lockdown, the last day of rain here in Northern Ireland was the 15th of March. The 16th of March, from the 16th of March right through to the August, there was no rain. There was no rain right through from the March to the June. The minute they says that child was found in a storm drain, the police come on a platform on the news and said, they were saying, you know, how did this child, media was asking, how did this child drowned in a storm drain? And they were saying, oh, the high tides of the high tides rains, because of the high heavy rains, the storm drains would have had high tides. There wasn't. It was the best summer we had here in over 300 years. So that's where they messed up.
On the news.
Yeah, it was all over the news. The police, before even his body was taken from where it was found, the police had ruled out on the news, no foul play. No foul play. Now, tell me this as well. A child found down a storm drain, right? Found so many kilometers down that storm drain, yeah? Now, a child, a 12-year-old, naked, okay? Not in the autopsy for the child's body, there wasn't one mark on that child's body. There wasn't one bit of broken skin. So you tell me how that child got down that storm drain without ripping his whole body apart if that child was afraid. Now, I'll bring you back to the storm drain. The storm drain that they're trying to say that he opened by himself, it would take 2 men to lift him, 2 big men to open that. And this was a 14-year-old kid. A 14-year-old kid.
Especially, why would you want to open a storm drain naked anyway and climb down? It doesn't make sense why you would be naked anyway.
This is a kid. This is a
Exactly.
kid who's
There's many
terrified. This
questions
is
to
a
that.
kid. This is a kid, by the way, who's terrified of the dark and was never sleep in the dark. Why would that child go into a storm drain? Why would that child even be anywhere near an area where he had no clue of where he was? Now, that kid was seen in the CCTV, over 180 cameras, and the police only showed a few CCTV, saying that all the rest of the cameras weren't working from right around those areas, right along the whole of Royal Avenue, right down the Shore Road, right down the route that the kid had taken. And it shows you in CCTV a kid naked, running. Now, people, that night, when that kid, whatever happened to that kid, they heard that kid's screams, and they did nothing. That kid was kept in that estate for whatever, like many days. And whatever connection the police had to the ending of this child's life, or at the end of this child's life, it's in them PII papers. It's in them papers.
No, it goes back, way back, Trace, to like the one when we went to see Joseph and Bobby, if you remember. Look how long it's been going on, way back in the early 70s when they was going through it all, exactly the same thing. And whenever you escaped, you was just, police just used to pick you back up and take you back to your
And beat
abusers.
you and beat the shit clean out of you.
Yeah.
I mean, Bobby and, I mean, but come on, the twins, they were known to go through one of the most horrific child abuse rapes that any child, anybody, any victim has ever come out of Northern Ireland. And if enough people sat down and listened to their story, they would agree, you know, what happened to these two guys, these twins, and all these Christian brothers, what they did them. Because we did, remember, Guy, we done the first ever interviews with them, and I mean, what comes out, it does open your eyes. But we have a massive police force, and we have they have whoever on that police force on their payrolls. The police and the police force, they have their masters. Their masters are coming from high above. Noah's Army is right across the world, and I mean, it's getting bigger and bigger, and a lot more people need to join it. And I hope people that listen to this tonight get on board with Noah's Army, because I believe this army is one of the strongest armies that I have ever seen come out of Northern Ireland, UK, in my whole lifetime. And I'm certainly behind it. I'm certainly behind it, because it's not just going to help to get justice for Noah. It's going to prevent these thinking that they can get away with what they're doing, and that they can put PII files in place. What? Because police fucked up. Now, one thing I do know, and I have said it, and I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it. The only way that child could have been put down that storm drain without a scratch being put on his body was in a body bag, and then taken out of the body bag. So was it the PSNI who put him down that child by that storm drain? Who put that kid in that storm drain? Because had that kid went into that storm drain on himself, he would have been black and blue, would he not? He would have had scrapes all over his body. He would have had no light. He was in the pitch black. The child would have been terrified, for starters. And you tell me how that kid was supposed to swim in and out and go down so many kilometers before he collapsed. Would that kid's body not be blood soaked?
And where's all his clothes?
Storm drains are dangerous. They kick you out while you're around.
Oh, he was naked. The clothes. He was naked. He was naked. He was naked.
No, but I mean,
because that's another thing as well. Where was the clothes? Why didn't they find the clothes at the scene or near the scene at the beginning of the storm drain? In it.
If he's on CCTV, Tracy, if you police have got him on CCTV and he's clothed, where's his fucking clothes? That should be the first thing.
He's on the CCTV naked, running naked, Gary. No. I believe this kid was already got and he escaped. And when he was running naked, I believe he was being chased. And I believe he ran into the dead end. And I believe he was picked up again and taken back to where he escaped.
Yeah. But that's
Or
even
it could
more.
have been
what
that
We should be
bad.
asking him.
Or it could have been that bad. He would rather brave the dark and a storm drain than go back to what he'd come from.
No, he couldn't open that fucking storm drain.
Hmm.
That
Yeah, but
kid
no,
did not
But
open
that's the
that
point,
storm drain.
actually. That is a point, because
The
they are
storm,
very early.
when half of Belfast was out looking at kid, I know the very people who went to that storm drain, and they said that storm drain was padlocked. It was locked. They couldn't even open it. So how the hell was that kid inside it? It was already stated clearly a couple of nights before he was found that that storm drain was checked and it was padlocked. Now,
So basically,
if you were to go now and open that storm drain without that being padlocked, I'm telling you now, guys, it's some pool even for you to open it. You fucking tell me how a kid who didn't even know
that's what I'm
the area
saying. That's
found
what
a
I'm saying.
storm
So
drain in the
basically,
middle of the arsehole of nowhere, in the pitch black, and
basic,
climbed into it.
so basically, it looks to all intensive purposes as if his body was put in the storm drain, the padlock put on, then when they was ready, they took the padlock off so people could open the drain and look and find him.
No, the police were told to go to the storm drain and get his body. We don't know that, but that's our stuff that's being. The police went to the storm drain and says they and claimed his body. You know, the truth of that still hasn't even come out to this day. The
So,
mother. This is what I'm saying. There's four files that the Secretary of State asshole in England, whoever he is, him with the glasses. I can't even get his name. I have it here in the notes. He signed the first PII certificate. He signed it. Now, McCriskin, the coroner, who is the one that's who's dealing with Noah's inquest, we're waiting now to see if he's going to sign the next. If he signs off on it, then that's it. That's it. But
so
why is he even
where's
getting the
the
opportunity to sign off on it?
where's the padlock then? And who's got the keys and where's the padlock? That's what they should be asking then if he was padlocked and now all of a sudden it was open and his body was in there. Where's the
Listen to me,
padlock?
Gary. No, listen to what I said. People who were looking for him said that it was padlocked. When the police took his body from it, they tried to tell everyone in the public domain it wasn't locked. It was locked. It was checked by people from Skegneel a couple of nights before, and these people know around that area like the back of their hand. They were born and reared in the area. They know where they to look. Where Noah wouldn't have. That kid hadn't got a clue where he was.
And was the lid on the drain or was it off the drain? Because if that
The
drain
lid was
lid's
on.
that heavy,
The lid was on. The lid was on.
I'm sorry.
All of it. That should with a storm drain that was padlocked 48 hours before.
Yeah.
It wasn't locked when that kid's body. Now, them storm drains all have to be padlocked. They're not allowed to be left unlocked.
What I'm trying to say to you, Tracy, if the lid was on and they've lifted the lid, then that child, if them storm drains are that heavy and he's climbed in, he wouldn't have been able to pull the lid back across. Be impossible.
Exactly. No, it's the one of the big ones, the big heavy ones you lift up and get in and it comes back down. But I'm telling you now, guy, we couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, so that kid couldn't do it. You couldn't even do it in fear of your life, running for your life. And that kid wouldn't even know what one of them was. He wouldn't have had a clue what that was. He wouldn't have had a clue that you could open them and that there was them iron steps attached to the wall where you could climb down and protect yourself and hide yourself. What, a child that was afraid of the dark?
It doesn't make sense to me, especially if he was frightened of the dark. Why would you open somewhere and climb down and let's like Nathan said? But there again, he's got to open it first, and if it's that heavy, you wouldn't be able to open it.
And how did he get the whole way down there and through all them trees and through all them bushes and through all them backyards and over all them backs? And how did he get down there naked with not a scratch on him?
And nobody's seeing him or catching sight of him or things. Because I'm sure if anybody see a child running naked down the street hysterically, you're gonna want to try and help that child. You're gonna phone somebody at least.
Yeah. Well,
so how did he get all that way and all to that thing if he was running down the street and where was everybody?
Well,
It's
that's
just
what we
no.
want to know, and we believe that there was talk. We believe there was negotiations. I believe there was negotiations somewhere where they had to go in, and they were told where to go and get his body. And I believe that somebody had to be involved and had to be careful what they put him down that storm drain in, because there wasn't a mark on that child's body. There wasn't a bit of broken skin. You see, that's where they went wrong as well. And for them being police, they're not that smart, because they thought, like people like us, normal members of the public, that we're too thick and stupid to even think about things like that. And, we should be leaving that kind of thinking up to them. We're not smart enough to work things like this out ourselves. And this is where they're going wrong.
It's like this
This
as
is
well,
where they're
Tracy.
going wrong.
Most phone calls now, wherever you're from, whether it's a council, whether it's a police, wherever, they tell you your calls are recorded for training purposes. So why haven't, if they phone the police and says go and get his, why haven't they released the tape recording of the man or woman's voice that's called the police to tell them to go where to find his body? Why haven't they released that?
Not really. Listen, it's all hidden. There's a lot even more to it than this guy. There's a lot more to it than that. There's so much more that they've hid. They've hid a lot more than that. I'm telling you, this is one of the worst child's cases and deaths that I've ever came across here in Northern Ireland, to be covered up to the highest, and I mean covered up to an extent where no matter how big the army is, they're still prepared to go to whatever lengths they need to go to. Now, I don't know what is going on legally or whatever, or anything like that, but if I could be next, now I'm going to go for this inquest. McCriskin could try and knock me back, but he's not, because I'm going to judicial review now and taking into the High Courts to have him removed of my daughter's case altogether. Because I have grounds. I have the grounds to have him removed, because I have found the grounds as the where there should have been an inquest, and therefore it'll be conflict of interest by the time I'm finished with him, and he'll have to be removed. Now, the other families have been successful in getting him removed through judicial reviews, and this is so important tonight, that this is why this is being done. There has to be other families out there who Joe McCriskin has dealt with their cases, and they believe that it wasn't right, something wasn't right, what happened to their loved one. They believe something's been covered up. They believe that they haven't heard all the truth of the facts. There's no way is my child the only child that McCriskin has his clause into, where it's not going to go anywhere and people are going to be protected.
Can I just say, if there is any families or anybody out there that does have anything they need to say or bring forward, please contact Gary, myself, or Tracy. Everything you say will be in complete confidence.
Yeah, because McCriskin needs he has to be removed. Like, this man has to be removed. This man is stone-faced. Stone-faced is too good a word for him. Like,
Trace, since the last time we spoke, 4 years, if you want to see the original of this, the first interview with me and Tracy, it's on my wall. So is the one with Joseph and Bobby Blair. If you want to go and look on my wall, ladies and gentlemen, it's all there for you to see. Shocking. But we put this first out 4 years ago, and in that 4 years, Trace, have they ever done a sample of that blood that was found on Karina's coat? Have they ever tested it yet for DNA?
I have that stuff away, because, as I said, I want to take that to an independent forensic analyst. There won't anybody here in this country will be getting their hands on those, because I don't trust anybody.
I'm just saying, but that needs to be done as well, because somebody.
It does need to be done, but that takes thousands. That costs thousands of pounds, Gary. Thousands of pounds to get done. So that's something that I will be doing. But right now, there's just as important stuff like the inquest. I mean, even to get to that stage and to get an agreement for an inquest to take place, I could be fighting this for the next 2 years to even get a date for an inquest, or because look, I've been fighting it the last 5 years. Now, I'm in a more mentally stable place to be able to carry out other things, carry on with other things while the JR is being built against McCriskin, while the evidence is being submitted, while the dates are being set for whatever here and whatever is needed in order. I mean, that's like a walk in the park to me. But McCriskin needs to watch himself, because this past couple of years, the council's forced me back out of retirement. They have forced my hand back into the legal side of things, and I mean, I've been having to build JRs left, right, and centre against them, and they're only bringing me back to my legal routes, and they really need to want to stop doing that, because it's just opening the doors for me to wanting to keep going. And it's do you ever get when you're forced back into something, you start to become a wee bit too comfortable with it, and you start to want to be able to do more with it and do more with it and do more with it. That's what they've done to me over the last 18 months. They put me in a position where they brought me back to my research, and where they brought me back to my legal routes, things that I shut shop way back in 2013 when we closed Portuguese's office down. Portuguese Drowning, who was the civil rights solicitor, very well known throughout the world. She died a few weeks ago. God rest her soul. She died of a massive heart attack while she was in hospital unwell. Portuguese gave a great many, best part of 50 years of her life to families who were underprivileged and deprived of many things, and whether they were awarded legal aid or not, she went into the court and she fought your corner. And this is why she was ran out by the Law Society that tried to run her out on many occasions, because she was taking on people's cases without charging them money. And we had to campaign to keep Portuguese in office. So, you know, if we campaigned for long enough to keep Portuguese in office and continued to work for 11 years after that, to make sure that this woman remained helping the families that she continued to help right up to her death. And she taught me everything I knew. But this last few years, like 4 years ago after that happened to Karina, I sort of stopped going to do all the court stuff, and it was sort of just trying to just deal with my own stuff, trying to deal with what happened with Karina's death for starters, trying to rebuild my life back together in order to go and get the justice that she deserved. And I knew I had to mentally be in the right frame of mind in order before I could do that. I knew McCriskin was a dangerous man, and I still know this day he's a dangerous man. And I knew that I had to take a step back and let him do this to others before I could come back at him. I could come back after him. And it's sad.
Yeah, well, people can see Karina's picture there, and I can tell you now, ladies and gentlemen, that every picture you see of Karina will be exactly the same as it. She's always had a smile on her face. She was always bubbly, always cracking jokes, singing, got a lovely voice, blah, you name it. This girl was in no way ever suicidal. I can tell you that for nothing. Just go and look any picture you see of her. You'll always see her smiling, never looks down or unhappy. And she never was, from the Karina I know anyway.
I mean, that particular night, she was in no fit state to even hang herself, because she had been at a friend's funeral, 3 funerals that day. She had drank a lot of alcohol. She was found at the bus stop outside St. Louise's secondary school at 4 a.m. in the morning, with where she had drunk, just necked a full half bottle of vodka raw. One of her friends got her and brought her up to the hostel. The member staff came out of the hostel and took her off her friend and said, "We will deal with her." Now, the autopsy report states by the pathologist, and he states there is over 8 hours missing of this victim's, of Karina's life. He said from 4 a.m. to 12:20 p.m. he says there's all them hours are missing of her life. So what the fuck's McCriskin doing not giving no inquest? If a pathologist said that in itself, that there was all them hours missing of my daughter's death, that there were unanswered questions for all them hours. And that alone should have rang alarm bells for him to say, well, I want an inquest into this because this doesn't sound right.
No.
You see, as I said to McCriskin, and as I said to the staff at Regina Celli who were involved in Karina's death, I says, you murdered the wrong mother's child. That's what you did. You murdered the wrong mother's daughter, because all these years you have been getting away with murdering these vulnerable women who come into your hostel for help. You aren't even qualified to give as much as a paracetamol for a headache. Never mind, do a statement and put it in their statement that at 7 a.m. that morning, Karina no longer felt suicidal. So they give her a sleeper and sent her to bed. Now, why would they give my daughter a sleeper when my daughter was already being prescribed highly toxic tablets by her own doctor, amitriptyline, antidepressants, stuff like that? They were the ones that would distribute their meds to them every day. It said in the autopsy report, Karina hadn't even took her own meds in 3 days because she'd been to people's funerals. So there hadn't even been her own prescribed medication by a doctor in her damn system for 3 damn days. So when the coroner rang me up, a coroner's office, his PA, and she says, Mr. McCriskin said, would you know anything about a tablet that Karina had taken? And I says, no, were you not the one supposed to be able to tell us that and explain that to us? Is that not what you're for? And she says, no, this it just seems very, very, very confusing, Miss Morris, because the tablet that we're actually talking about can't even be prescribed by any GP in Northern Ireland. It can only be prescribed by a GP down south. And I thought, well, my daughter wouldn't have took, if she was going to take any tablet, she'd have took her own. She certainly wouldn't have took a tablet that she didn't even know what it was or wasn't even on the market. And when I finally got the autopsy report in the December when they finally handed it over, when I looked and I went through all the drugs, she didn't even have as much as a grain of cocaine in her system. She hadn't even got her own meds in her system. She had no drugs. She had alcohol in her system, high levels of alcohol. But the 2 tablets that they were talking to me about that was in her system was highly in her system not long before she died. And then they got me charged with harassment, and I got full disclosure of their statements. It's something that they've never had to hand anybody before. Bingo, there's where I got them. They said they gave my child a sleeping tablet at 7 a.m. and let her go to bed. So they give my child a sleeping tablet 3 hours after she came in highly intoxicated from drinking raw vodka on suicide watch for 3 hours. And they give her a cup of tea and put her to bed and give her a fucking sleeping tablet.
And why would you bind your own ankles? It don't make sense to me.
Like when it said there was lacerations in Karina's ankles, and I do believe that my Karina would have put up a fight. I mean, my Karina would have stood and fought 3 men on her own if she had to. She could take on any man, woman. She could handle herself. That was one thing about her. Now, in order for these people to even kill my child, they would have had to give seriously dope her up to an extent where she would be completely out of control and not gone. Now, this is what I'm saying. When the autopsy reports, it stated that there was something 0.4 in her system, and they said that it was a tablet that was taken, just looked like earlier on that day or maybe that night when she was maybe in somebody else's company. But then when I got the full disclosure of the statements, the staff told themselves in their statements that they give the tablet and put her to bed. And then it says that it's shown on CCTV, Karina walking into the shower rooms just after 8 a.m. and not coming back out. Really? Was that, are you talking about the Karina who was on suicide watch? The Karina who you shouldn't have not allowed out of your sight. The Karina who apparently you allowed to go upstairs and after 7 o'clock and go into and take a sleeping tablet, give her a sleeping tablet, but yet they weren't allowed to be in their beds after 11 a.m. They were thrown out of their rooms. They weren't allowed in their rooms after 11. So they were giving my daughter a sleeping tablet who hadn't slept all night, who had been drinking raw vodka, legless, completely legless, couldn't talk, hardly talk or walk. And they said that she decided that 3 hours later she wasn't suicidal of any sort, and it was okay to give her a tablet that couldn't even be prescribed by GPs up here and put her to tell her to go to bed. That doesn't even fucking make sense.
Well, it don't make sense if they've put her to bed with the sleeping tablets and then there's up and walking into the shower room. It don't make sense. It don't add
No,
up.
and not only that, not only that, the shower room, Karina was just over 9 stone when she died. There's no way that shower rail would have helped my child if she had been hanging by the neck for 5 hours. There's no fucking way. There's no way with that. A shower rail, a fucking shower rail.
Yeah,
There's
not unless
no
it was
way
raised in
with it
Soviet
helped.
Russia, it wouldn't be possible.
There's just no way. And they said that she was hanging for all those hours. Well, if she was hanging for all those hours, how come right down her whole back it was all Rickus Marcus of her clothes? Right there, brah, right there. How come she was covered in Rickus Marcus as she was hanging? Rickus Marcus only sets in like that when you're lying flat on your back.
It don't make sense to me, that down, because if it's on suicide,
the plus her larynx was intact. Now, if somebody of that nature, plus the noose that was made that went around her neck, was done professionally, how the fuck she wouldn't have known how to do a noose? She had severe learning disabilities.
Not just that.
Karina was fully statemented all her life, all her educational life.
When you're legless, the last thing you want to be doing is making nooses and that, because you don't know what state you're in. You just want to fall asleep and that, you know, you're all over the place, and you don't want to be doing stuff like that, in my eyes anyway. And even so, if it's on suicide watch, and it ain't on suicide watch anymore, but then you're still going and
check up onto the rail. How did you get up onto the rail? Now, this is another thing, the reason why he's going to JR too. I have asked again and again and again, give me the scenes of the crime scene. Give me the fucking photographs from the forensics. The photographs where they took of her lying on the floor, the photographs where they took of everything surrounded by them when they first go in. And he's trying to say that he gave me them. Now, come on, Gary, you know, if he'd have given me them, come on, Nathan, I would have been right up there. And, you know, believe you me, I'd have had this case cracked and all. He's saying that he get, well, if you know, well, he's a liar. And even if he thinks he did give them, then they have to have their copy. So send us another copy because we didn't get them. And the solicitor said to me, well, Tracy, everything I have here, you give me. And I says, well, did I give you? Did you see any photos of my dead daughter lying on the floor? Anything around her neck? Did you see any photos of anything? He says, no. I says, well, that's evidence. I says, if anybody I was going to give them photos to, it would have been you. He says, you're correct. I says, well, that's another one added to the list for JR because he's refusing to give me those photos. And I want every shred of fucking evidence, every shred of paperwork that they have from the second they lifted that phone at 12 and rang 999 for the police.
The other thing that don't add up to me is if say Karina had tried to do that and is drunk, you're all over the show. It'd have been, to put that round, it'd have been fight. It'd have pulled that show out straight off.
Should have woke the whole house up. Should have been bouncing off the fucking walls. She wouldn't have been able to sneak into a shower room and get the bedside cabinet drawers from the side of her bed and carry them out. Come on. She couldn't even stand.
And also, it would have ripped, I'd say, I've been in many shower rooms and they're easy. If you give them a good tug, they come off the wall. So,
yeah. You tell me how overnight stone can hang there for 5 hours, and if you're lying there dead and you've hung yourself, your body's twice its weight when it's limp.
Yeah. He would have pulled it off the wall. I would have said there should be some damage to the shower unit.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of the residents have told me that morning that Karina wasn't about, that none of them could get into the bathroom upstairs. The bathroom was locked. And every time they went and asked a member of staff, could they open the bathroom door? They wanted to have a bath. They were telling them, no, the bath's broke. The bath's out of bounds today. So I think they had drowned Karina as well. I think they put her into a bath of water. And because when my daughter described her clothes, how her clothes were handed to her, because I have made her describe them. I said, I need every detail. I need every detail of how it smelt in the bag, what colour they looked like, what colour the bottoms were. Was it like a brown? Was it like what kind of? You would tell me they were soaking. Did it look like they were soaked in what? Is it fucking blood? Is it what? She really couldn't get the grasp with explaining that, but she did say about the stench of smell. She did say about the horrific stench. She says, Mummy, I couldn't hand it to you, and even though she took them and she washed them, it didn't matter because the evidence was still there. The evidence was still there that something wasn't right. And I was like, how the fuck is my kid's child's tops all covered in Rickus Morcus? But sure, thought they said she was hanging for all this time. They said she wasn't on the ground, she was hanging. And what the fuck? Where them bottoms come from? Karina wouldn't have wore them bottoms. I says, there's no way would she found dead in them bottoms. There's no way would she have took her own knife and in them clothes. I just knew, even if she was tempting to take her own life, she'd have put something decent on her. Because everybody knew Karina. I knew no matter how low Karina was at her lowest.
We've only got to look at that. We've only got to look at that picture. It was always immaculately dressed.
There was no way would my child have even at that. And if they did give her a tablet and send her to bed, like they insisted on, what the fuck were they doing giving my child a tablet? He was highly intoxicated and he'd been at a funeral, 3 funerals that day, and he'd been drinking all day right into the early hours that morning. And you could get 3 so-called members of staff deciding that after 3 hours that my daughter was no longer suicidal and she was no longer a risk, and she could just pump this a tablet down her neck that not even one doctor here in Northern Ireland would even allow on their market.
Usually when you're drunk,
and they've never in all these years have they ever had anybody come at them and ask for full disclosure of statements and things like that, where I did. And that's what screwed them over. Now, even though Karina was killed on the 9th of April, they didn't do their statements to the middle of May. That's what they fucked up too. The police didn't even go back near the members of staff and take their statements till the middle of the May.
That's shocking.
And you see, the reason why there's no problem doing that is because they've been doing it for years. They've been getting away with it for years. Until they got me charged with harassment. And by getting me charged with the harassment, I was delighted, because I knew then full disclosure of everything to the hostel I was able to get. And that's how we caught them. That's how we knew there was something more sinister going on. And then the blood in her thing, the vomit on her clothes, the clothing, the blood in the inside of her jacket, which isn't hers, because it says in the autopsy report that there wasn't one bit of broken skin in her body. There was nothing. There was no broken skin. There was no sores. There was not one bit of broken skin. So whoever's blood was on that jacket was just not hers. And I mean, the truth, I was told that the chef done a runner to England. So I know the chef was involved in this. I think the chef walked in unexpectedly when it had happened. I know there was a resident who seen it happening, because they put her in flat 10 the next day. So we've been trying to...
Have they took any scrapings off her fingernails or anything, Trace? Because they should have done all that as well, really, to be fair.
Well, this is what they won't give us. This is what I'm saying. It won't give me nothing, Gary. And because when the police came out to my house and said that, you know, that she'd been found. I wanted to go and see. I wanted to go down to the hostel. And they made me aware that her body was gone and all. And my other daughter went down and told me that that she was gone, because the black van, which would be the coroner van, you know, the undertakers, they would come and take the body away and take it down to the morgue. And the police was phoned at 12:20. The forensics didn't turn up to 1:45, 10:50, and they had the whole crime scene open and closed by 2:15. An hour and a half, 90 minutes, and gone, because they were at my door about 2:50, and I wanted to go down there, and then they told me the body wasn't there, and then my daughter came in and said to me, "No, mommy, the body isn't there, because it's been took away in the van, because I was down there. The body isn't there." So she was, so right up the 12:20 when they made the call. Then, as I said, the forensics came, and then they had her boom, and they had her down, gone, body and all, out of the hostel and down to the morgue, so I couldn't see it. I believe my daughter was dead from it was dark. It wasn't even bright yet when she was killed. They murdered her. I was also told that they began to get rid of the statues in the church, in the hostel. Downstairs there was a chapel, and like this chapel had the, you know, Our Lady and Jesus and all the saints and whatever, the statues for years, many decades, if it even say. And when I started challenging them and asking them, you know, where did you strangle her to death? Was it in the church in front of the altar? Because there was she was found with broken rosary beads. I says, broken rosary beads? How could there be broken rosary beads if she hung herself? She wouldn't have time to put rosary beads around her hands. I says, what you do? You just make my daughter kneel down in front of the altar for being a naughty girl? I says, and not doing as she's told, and maybe swearing, and you told her to come and put there's a wee set of rosary beads. Mum would say the wee Hail Mary, you're upset, and end her life. Did somebody sacrifice her from behind? Did you strangle her? Because that's when I believe where the water blisters would have started bursting out around the likes of the statues. I says, you know, is my child's DNA all over the statue of Our Lady, the statue all over the altar. And a few of the residents came forward and said that when I did a live exposure on that and asked them, you know, is that what they'd done to my child? He says they went into the chapel and got rid of the Our Lady and Jesus and all the statues. They removed them. They removed them and they replaced them. Why would they do that?
No.
Why would they rush out? And I was also made aware that they possibly could have made a noose. The noose that hung that they made it look like Karina had hung herself. They made the noose with underneath. They lifted the bed in the room, and do you know the old style beds where they had the wee tiny, like the wee spindle legs, the wee spindle feet. It was like a wee leg, a wee fat leg that would come out, and then it would have like a wee bulge. You know what I'm talking about? That's whoever it was made the noose from that thing in the bed, in that room. And Karina's roommate, whoever she was, I believe she woke up while it was all going on, and I believe Karina fought them. I believe Karina fought for her life. I believe that Karina may even been able got ran out of the chapel and tried to make it upstairs for help. Do you know that somebody upstairs would see what they were doing to her? And I think that she's went into her bedroom, and then that's when they sent for the gardener. And then I believe that's when the gardener came, and that's when the job was finished off. Because on the Monday, the Belfast Telegraph had put in the Belfast Telegraph that she was found hanging in the woods. So it was only like after her death, and 6 months later, when her clothes was found. I rang the Belfast Telegraph and I says, I want that reporter to tell me who told her that my daughter was found in the woods in Poglass. And when they finally got back to me, they said it was the police. I says, how could the police tell a journalist that my daughter was found in the woods on a Monday when my daughter was found hanging in Regina Coeli Hostel on the Sunday? The police are the ones that came to my house to tell me where she was found. The police were there throughout the whole shebang of her body being moved. So why would the police tell a journalist on the Monday that my child was found in a forest, in the woods, in Poglass?
It don't make sense.
A lot of it don't
Well,
make sense. It's like the blood pooling on the back. It
that's
should
what
be the feet.
no, Nathan,
It's
I
like-
think that's where they were meant to bring her. And I think that them cops were in that hostel that night. And as far as they were concerned, is when they left that hostel, they thought that Karina was being taken to the woods. Only I was told later on by members, residents, that the gardener had a thing for my Karina, and the gardener had a real sick kind of love for her.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it. He couldn't take her to the woods, and he was so upset by her death that's the reason why. But then 2 cops apparently left. So them 2 cops must have thought when they were going off duty that Karina was being taken to the woods. And then when they come back on duty again, they didn't know. They didn't know that they took her to the shower room instead. They didn't know that she wasn't taken to the woods. And that's where they fucked up.
It's like the rigor mortis, the blood pouring out. The physical evidence is conflicting with what's on the record massively.
And plus, the residents had also told me that many a night they heard the police come into the hostel late at night after 12 o'clock, and they would hear them still there laughing and giggling away till the early hours. And the residents would have said to the staff the next day, what was the police doing here last night? Why were the police here? Because some of the residents would have been quite vulnerable to that, because they would have had, incidents with the police, and they didn't know whether the police were coming for them, whether it was about them. So they were genuinely, innocently asking, why was the police here last night? And the members of staff would have just said, none of your business, you mind your business. So what were the police able to go in to that place at that time of the night and sit with members of staff in the office for hours on end, have cups of tea and whatever else, and sit with their feet up? I mean, there's caring in the community and there's caring in the community. What were they doing in the early hours of the morning? I mean, to me, that alone would be frightening, vulnerable women who are already do have issues with the police, but yet they're bringing them into their hostel for cups of tea.
Yeah. And anybody who's watching this, ladies and gentlemen, who thinks it sounds too out there to happen, please go and watch when me and Tracy interviewed Joseph and Bobby. It's on my wall. I'll say it again. And you've got living witnesses there of the type of things that actually went on. You would not believe what went on. And that was only bits on camera. When me and Tracy was talking to Bobby and Joey off camera, it's horrendous. Obviously, it's too raw for them, and it's definitely something that if they did sit and tell you, it takes some believing, but you can just see it's all true. But it's something like with the Confidentiality Act that me and Nathan have and CMW, we would never talk about that. That's up to the Joseph and Bobby. But,
that's not. It's not our place.
Yeah, but it is horrendous. If I could sit here and tell you, you wouldn't. It'd make your jaw drop. And Tracy, you might think Tracy's out there, but everything Tracy's saying is true. These things do happen, but everybody's blinkered, and you're in your own little worlds, and you think, oh, well, yeah, it ain't happening around me, but it doesn't happen around you. It happens around vulnerable people who they know they can get away with it with. That's what happens. That's where it all happens.
I mean,
Sorry,
Northern Ireland is notorious for what went on within children's homes and asylums, things like that. I
Oh
mean,
God,
I
yeah.
know of two massive cases. There was a few hundred bodies found, I believe, in a furnace or something in one children's home, and there was over 3,000 children's bodies found buried in the back garden of another home.
That was
And
down
this was all
south.
done by nuns and priests.
Down Southern Ireland, yep, yep. That was the there's have you not watched the thing on TV about that? The whole exposure into that. It's great. I'll have to find out what you call it. Was it they were only children or the missing children? I'll have to find out exactly what you call that, Nathan, and send you the link on that because
Yeah,
it
'cause
is a good
there's a
watch.
few. I mean, there's two major ones. There's one in Northern Ireland, there's one in Southern Ireland, but there's about, I think there's about 8 that I know in Northern Ireland, and there's actually more in Southern Ireland. I think there's 23 cases of children's homes out in Southern Ireland, and these are all. See, this is the thing. In Southern Ireland, because there's a difference. In Southern Ireland, some of the children's homes, for some reason, had their own crematorium.
Well, that's something that me and Gary were talking about earlier, weren't we, Gary? We were talking about that earlier about the camps, the so-called concentration camps that they're starting to build
Oh yeah,
throughout
we have got
all over Europe,
complexes.
UK, and you know who are the for? Are they going to be for the facts or the unfacts? Who's going to get through into them? Is it going to be the unfacts or the facts? You know, who's the crematoriums for? You know,
Well,
why have they added these
yeah.
crematoriums onto these camps?
Just to explain,
So
some
there's
people won't know
something.
this. Just to
So
explain,
that we,
some
you
people won't
know,
know this,
so
but we actually have complexes being built, and some have actually been being built since 2014, 2015. I think I first did a piece on it. These are actually, they're basically towns. If you was to look at it on a map, you'd see it as a town, but these are not. These are actually what they call prison estates or prison complexes, and these prisons, well, they're meant to be complexes or holding centres, actually for some reason have their own hospital and their own crematorium built on site. These are basically prisons and basically holding centres that are self-sufficient. Now, the only time I've ever seen anything like this, because it struck me, this is why I've done it back in 2015, I think it was, because it struck me, because the only time I've ever seen anything like that are concentration camps or the old asylums. You know, like in the 1800s, early 900s, the old asylums used to be the same thing, self-sufficient, own crematorium. Literally, some of them was like a village grew and
but I don't really want to be getting into that side of things because of what we're talking about tonight. You know, tonight isn't about getting that far into, because we need to get this out here about these corners and about these kids, Dan, because there's people that are not going to go on listening, you know, into things that they don't really know much about. When I really wanted tonight to concentrate on what these corners are doing, to let people out there know there is more families. There's wee 14-year-old Noah. Nobody knows what happened to him. There's a whole world. There's hundreds of thousands of people. His army. He's got an army of followers. He's got an army of fighters. His mum's being manipulated. His mum's being manipulated. Not even manipulated. She's being scaremongered by the media. The media are now starting to attack her. They're starting to put articles up, and they're starting to say that she's been pulled about saying that she believes Noah was murdered. Never once did Noah's mum say, I believe my child was murdered. She has said, I believe my child came to harm, and I just want the truth. There's hundreds of us have said we believe he was murdered, but yet the media are attacking her. You and I know this only too well, Gary. They're coming at her the way they came at me. Do you know what I mean, Nathan? When after Karina, they were attacking me in that way. They were accusing me of this, accusing me of that. You know, anything that I was wording. I mean, I stood and I called some of the judges. I give some exposure on them judges back then in 2017. I took no prisoners where that was concerned. I even exposed the judges who was involved in, attached to the Regina Celli Hostel and attached to the Treasury and attached to the funding of the place. And I couldn't believe why was this judge connected to a women's wet hostel, and this judge was also connected to the manager who owned the hostel. And there was so much going on there. I mean, them two had been having an affair, and were in Thailand together back then at that stage. So I was giving out an awful lot of information, and I was taking no prisoners. I didn't give a shit. But they seem to be coming after when the mums are standing up and asking, I want answers. No PII. I mean, not in my name. It's no PII, not child's name. That there should be full transparency. Those 4 files that they're holding on that child is the everything's been covered up to whoever is behind those files connected to.
Well, this is the thing. It's done by design.
To the go missing of Noah, to the whatever happened to Noah, to the afterwards with Noah, right up to they called on forensics to go into that storm drain, that child. So right up to then, that whatever is in those files cannot be they're trying to say it's not in the public interest. How the fuck would it not be in the public interest? If there's nothing to hide, and if there was no foul play, well then why PII papers if there was no foul play? If there was no foul play, they shouldn't have the problem with transparency.
Well, this is the thing. It should be transparent, and this is done by design. And it's done so much to a point now. It's like take what's happening to now. That's trial by media. If that was to happen to the alleged accused, it would be a mistrial. It would be allowed.
This is one thing I wanted to. I didn't want to leave out. Wanted to get in about Geffen, yeah, because Ivan Geffen, when Ivan Geffen went to trial, right, he got one of the best barristers and solicitors in London to fight his corner, to fight his case. Now, this is what I want people have got to realise that back then it was happening, because even now it's happening even more so. So there's a way back all them years ago in 1990, and millennium 2000, right through to 2003, wherever long Geffen had to fight his own corner. Kingsley and Napley solicitors.
Oh, I know that name.
London. Right, Nathan. These things, right? This is why I want to get out there as well. Just to let people know. These people, I mean, they were known as one of the foremost criminal practices in the country, right? That's saying largely thanks to our role in a number of high-profile celebrity cases. This included the Jeremy Thorpe conspiracy to murder trial, the attempt to kidnap a Princess Anne, and the Steve Biko inquest. So there's like only some of them. And when I went down them all and I looked, because I printed some of them off, some of these people and what to do, if for this firm and they work for this firm, it would scare you, because I believe that it's still going on to this day. We probably have this law firm in London, who have got some of the most notorious paedophiles freed and walking away from what should have been serious long-term prison sentence. Yeah. And I mean, that's the type of law firm that Geffen was able to pay to demolish and get him acquitted from a case. And it sickens me to this day, where I would love to know who was the barrister from Kingsley and Napley. I'd love to know who that barrister was.
There's a few characters in that firm.
So these people would be well known in 20 Bunhill Street, London. I mean, that must be, I think that's probably north. Is it north of London or East Croydon? Yeah. Probably 2A. But see, wherever, I mean, these are well high up to do lawyers. These are the type of people who are getting these bastards off of what they're doing.
They're a firm that are capable of choosing.
You know yourself, you have to have the corrupt barrister, you have to have the corrupt coroner, you have to have the corrupt. There always has to be somebody at each playing each role corrupt.
And, a lot of people don't believe that, but there is evidence it should be released. I think it's later this year. That
Well,
should
so
be
yeah,
coming to
you're right,
public
because
knowledge.
example,
So,
when Karina's death, when Karina, you know, and I exposed them and said that I believe my child was murdered. I mean, people called me, oh, she's nuts and everything else. But hey, there's how many more people? As I said, you, Gary, I would be sitting back, and unfortunately, it would have to happen to the other families before
yeah,
people will actually
some
see what this sick motherfucker is all about. And look what he's doing. Look what if he can do that to a 14-year-old kid who he knows something horribly went wrong and what happened that day. And for them, I mean, they're even accusing the mum of using words that she hasn't used, and it's horrific because they're forcing her. It seems to be that they're forcing her hand now to try and they're bullying her. But I believe like she's being intimidated now. These newspapers did not want to write jack shit about this kid for weeks. When he was after he was missing and found dead and everything else, they didn't want to know. And then all of a sudden, this Sunday, two papers write two big pages write ups about her. So you know, this is where you got to be careful because this is where
yeah.
they're coming at you. This is where
I mean,
they're going to try.
I'd say everyone really needs. If you ever hear the words "not in the public's interest," you seriously
Mm-hmm.
need to look more into what they're actually hiding. Because every
Yep.
single case I've been involved with, like every time they say "not in the public's interest," there is a reason for that. Because usually there is officials involved. So, like I said, at the end of this year, and I think it might be next year, I'm not sure, but there's going to be. I'm not going to can't say anything right now. It's not to do with me. It's to do with other people, but there should be a case coming on, and there is actually the legal teams from CAFCAS, social services, and all are all involved in this children's trafficking ring and prostitution ring, and it's all about to come out. So when people don't believe it can be like you say from the bottom to the top, understand it is that way by design. They've been doing this for a long time. The fear mongering, the bullying, the harassment, the trial by media of the victim not the accused and stuff like that. This is all done by design. We have got to get out of this sort of thing where it's a case of we hear cases like this and we just shy away from it. It's like I don't want to hear that. I don't want to listen to it. It's like we actually do really
Unless people
morally
start,
have to take.
no,
Yeah,
no, no, unless people, and I'm sick of saying it and I'll keep saying it, unless people start to educate themselves and start to take these motherfuckers before the courts, to start taking civil cases out against them, start costing them money. And until people start doing that and showing them that they're not afraid to challenge them, they're not afraid to bring them before the courts, they're not afraid to build their own cases against them, whether they win or whether they lose, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that that they're saying that a massive part of the population isn't just standing up to them, but they're also smart enough to
yeah.
fucking take them on and challenge our asses. And the vast majority would come out with their head held high while they
Well,
come out with their
it's not
fucking
just the
head
people
in
with
the
the
head.
cases. We need people that are not involved with the case as well. Stop shying away from cases like this because they use this. It's not in the public's interest. Stop shying away from it. Make it your interest. I know it's hard. I know it's not nice things out, but I look at it like this: if a child dies in your community, it is in the public's interest and the community's interest to find out how that child died and everything about it, so you can make sure that that is avoided in the
Mhm,
future. If you ignore it, you're condemning another child, as far as I'm concerned.
mhm.
Yep.
At the end of the day, there's too many kids um, being killed off. There's too many kids deaths being covered up. And if, you know, they have family members out there who are prepared to fight to the death with every last breath they have in their bodies until they get answers and they get justice and they get whatever they need, well, then that's so be it. Yeah, as we all know, they're trying to take away our rights um of freedom of speech, our rights of freedom of emotion, freedom of anything. They're trying to do away with all of it. Where it's like if we come on try and do something like this, and you know, update people on what's going on out there, and you know what the hell we're up against, because this is what I'm saying. I came out when we first come on here, and I spoke about Geffen. It's worse. It's worse. It's 100 times worse now than what it was back then. I mean, send me back to that day any day. Send me back to June 2000. Send me back to that year now,
Well,
because
this is the
if
this is
I
the
had
thing.
the if I knew what I have under my belt now, if I knew it back then. Would things have been handled differently? Oh, $1,000,000%, $1,000,000%. But we have to come through our worst. We have to hit the most rock bottom. We have to learn how to pick ourselves up. We've got to learn how to mobilize and our own trauma and stabilize our own trauma. And we have to actually pick our days where we're going to have a dark day and not such a dark day, because we can't afford to have dark days.
That's exactly it.
One dark day could lead to a child's life ending, another child's life ending, by you just sitting having one dark day. And
Nathan was right though, Tracy, when he's just said, basically, like you've just said, what's happened with young Noah. People should be saying, I don't give a fuck what you say. We want to know what's happened, and they should be supportive of that family. And everybody in Ireland, well, everybody in the UK should be up in arms and saying, we want to know what's happened to this child. Never mind, it's not in the public interest, this, that, and the other. We want to know. And if that started to happen, then we would be in a much better place. But unfortunately, it won't never happen, because it's not happened to my child syndrome. It's not happened to my child, but it could be your child tomorrow. That's what you've got to realise.
Exactly. And I mean,
Could be you alone fighting a system and multiple authorities all by yourself without the help of community. So start being communities again. It upsets me, the fact, because it started to come out in the 70s and 80s, and then it was hushed up again, and then they thought they'd done it so good. It's like Tracy says, they just got so blatant and brazen with it. They upped the game, saying chronic technology and everything just allowed them just to go a lot worse. So it's more now that we need people to actually start taking notice into what goes
pedophilia
on
is at its
with these
highest
authorities.
ever, because the ignorance, the arrogance of people who will sit in their homes and they think, oh, it's my family's fine. It's not happening to my family. Hello. One day your family's going to make a family, and that family's going to make a family, and they're going to have kids to that family who you don't even like. That family who wasn't who wasn't put in such a high pedestal as what you were growing up. That family who wasn't as highly educated as what you were growing up. That family who couldn't afford all the fancy foods growing up in life that you got the experience, and your kid could end up walking in and having a kid into that family, and social coming in on top of that kid. And it doesn't matter whether you're middle class, no matter how high up you are there the ladder, doesn't matter if you're living in a mansion, they want to come for that kid, they come for that kid. And that's maybe just for the mother having an attitude and standing up for her own fucking damn rights. So these people think they're untouchable. These people who think it could never happen to them. I am sick to death of families coming to me and saying to me, I never knew this had happened. I never knew this could happen to me. I never knew these people could lie like this. I never knew. Well, welcome to our world. Now, welcome to our world.
I actually know a case, and Kafkas and the social workers put down to the fact of that, because basically there was allegations made, but absolutely no evidence. There was a court case, there was loads of crap things, but Kafkas actually put down on the paperwork as the reason why they went against the father is because the father was more confident than the mother, so they believed that the father, because of his confidence, would have been the abuser, and it turned out it's the mother. This is how easy it is, people. They go on what they think, they go on what's on a piece of paper. They do not care about your family. They do not investigate your family.
Of course they don't.
Investigate the situation.
Come on, you're a number for profit. That's all you are. You're a number for profit. And if you're not worth anything, then they get rid of you. You know, we know what way it works. We know what way it works for the social workers. We know way it works. But it's the fact that these people in high authority and what they're getting away with. These people are getting away with murder.
Literally.
These people are getting away with.
I mean, you've just hit the nail on the head there, Trace. And it's true. It doesn't matter if you've got a beautiful child that they want. 10, 12-year-old child, 14-year-old child, boy or girl, and a beautiful child, and they take a shining to them driving down the road or whatever, they will find out who that child is. And it doesn't matter whether you're middle class, whether you're working class, or whether you class yourself as upper rich. If they want that child, like Tracy just said, they will find a way and they'll dig on you and they'll get that child off you, whether you like it or not. And then you'll be in the position that all we've been talking about tonight, and you won't have nobody to help you. And that's when you'll suddenly realise, shit, why didn't I stick up for all these other families in the past when I should have done? And that's when it's time to you people. So don't never think, well, I'm all right, Jack, it's never going to happen to me, because you could wake up at any time and have a phone call that your child's gone missing on its way from school. Let that sink in.
And this is the thing, and look, we've had it. I honestly, as well, I do believe that they're letting a lot of these cases being outed because they do want to chip our children. I don't believe it's for a good reason. I believe it's so
Listen, I believe my daughter was murdered. I believe my daughter was murdered because of the standing up to the paramilitaries I did for all those years. I mean, a lot of people would say to me, there's not many women who got away with beating Jerry Adams. I may have beat Jerry Adams, but I don't believe I got away with it.
No.
Because I believe, see that beautiful face there? I believe she paid the price for that.
Yeah.
I believe that. I do believe. I do believe.
They won't take you down, Trace, but they'll take the people around you down.
Yes, I believe these sick bastards come back for and punish you in a way that they want you to live. They want you to live with the pain that they're taking away your most, they're taking away your firstborn. And these it's so, and people would say to me, Tracy, how do you go on? How do you? I thought, well, fuck. Hold on a minute. I'm not going to let them and take my child away from me and kill my baby and get away with doing what they're doing. I'm not going to sit in a corner and turn the light out and sit in the dark. I says, that's not what I was trained to do. And if I spent all those years helping other families and doing all that great work that I did with, a lot of families and saving a lot of kids from the car system and the trafficking and bringing down the paedophile rings, well, what good am I to my daughter then? Why would I spend all those years getting all that experience under my belt? And the minute that they go and they end my child's life, what good am I to her? Crumbling and falling apart? Because she needs me more now than ever. If anything, she needs every bit of experience, wisdom, every bit of intelligence that I can find and I can put together and I can put in and put behind her case. And not just fighting her killers, fighting out the answers as to why they chose her, and why to give her such a horrible death.
Yeah, but I do think, Trace, thinking about it in the bigger terms and for the future, that like now the Noah Donahue Foundation, yourself, other people who are fighting justice for their children, we've got to bring all these people together in one big pool. So you've got, like you've said, more people together fighting who know about everybody else's case, because you've got some people following this case, some people followed your case. They all need to come together and explain all the cases so everybody can see what's gone on here, there and everywhere, and put it all in one big pool, and you're stronger to fight these people.
Exactly, and then we can actually bring due process cases, malicious due process cases.
This is why I've come on here tonight and said about McCriskin, because this man, there's no way that he start with Karina and end with Noah. There's no way this man has been around for quite a while, even before Karina's death. I only came across him after Karina's death. Before Karina's death, this man, I'd never heard of this man. This man wouldn't have interested me in the slightest. But once he became and who he became, and then I seen the suspicions, and I seen the penny was starting to drop, that he wasn't who he seemed to be, and I never ever thought in a million years that 5 years later I'd still be put in a position where I'm only taking him to JR now. But as I said, people's deaths all working in different ways, and the last couple of years they have had me taking judicial reviews out against them in the high courts, having to self-present my own cases, successfully self-present my own cases. But is that a sign? Is that a sign that I do have to come out of retirement in that department? I do have to start thinking these kind of cases need to be going to the high courts. Was this the reason why I done all the training all those years ago, with Project, wherein I would have built judicial reviews with her and paginated all the JRs and all the files and went to the high courts and went to the different buildings where the defendants and who was fighting who and who had to have copies of all these JRs. So I was only ever used to building them, putting them into files and into the big log files, bringing them to high court, serving them to the courts. And I mean, I done that for quite a few years, closing down Project's office. I never had to build them and fight them. You know, there's a massive difference there, where I had to
Yeah.
build the JRs. I had to put in the application myself. I had to find the evidence. I had to find the threshold, the grounds. I had to fight. I had to affidavit this. I had to serve notice on, I don't know, many people. I mean, I served notice on them left, right, and centre, because whoever I served notice on deserved to have notice served on them. And they're bringing me out of something that I put to bed years ago, and there's a reason behind it. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know why it's happening, but what I do know is they've forced my hand. They the human rights commissioners came on board with our cases. They've been amazing. Because I won Aaron's case, his JR, where they had to get a permanent home over his head, a roof over his head, and they got him a beautiful, beautiful home. They given the keys the day they were about to go to court, where a date was being set for trial. The human rights commissioner rang me and, you know, thanked me on the work that I'd done getting his case to the JR for roof over his head. But they're now taking the council to court here, for they still believe that he was entitled to his intimidation, and that they believe, even though he's permanently housed, that he should have had this intimidation. There's other grounds and thresholds that they found that met in order to bring them to JR. So they're bringing the council to another judicial review at the high courts for Aaron. Now, they're using Aaron's case as a landmark case, but they did say to me, Miss Marsh, we would never have been able to do this had you not have provided us with the evidence. They says you helped us build this case, which has brought on pro bono barristers who have came on board and who want to take. We are taking these back to judicial review. So I did say to them, look, would you please do me a favour? When you are taking this to JR, would you let the DWP and communities know? Because these are the people that fund these councils to help vulnerable families when they're in certain situations that's unforeseen and out of their control. And these people literally make their lives 100 times worse. So I was delighted when they responded back to me and said, oh, don't worry about it. They says, we've already added them party to the proceedings. And I was delighted, because that's never been done. I don't think that's been done before with this, where Aaron's case has been made as a landmark case. It will help the LGBTQ plus communities, where in the future, where the way they've been treated by the council, it's not going to go unnoticed. What these people are getting away with, you know, as I said, like Gers McCriskin, he's in bed with Sinn Féin. He sits in the policing boards and all with Sinn Féin, and goes into the public meetings and sits up in the stage where Alex Maskey and Paul Maskey, and they all sit there and, you know, talk about the drugs that's in our community. Hey, hello, maybe you want to stop bringing them in the first place, and we wouldn't have as much drugs in our community. Sit up there like fucking two-faced, you know what I mean? Prats. But that's the kind of manipulation they're using within our own communities, because Joe McCriskin is sitting there with Sinn Féin, and then you have Sinn Féin coming on and saying, release the files, give Noah's mom full transparency. Hello? This is people who shed all over our country and run our country and decide when they go to work and when they don't. and decide, you know, what, like as Michelle O'Neill only gets to say what she has to say after Jerry's written it down for her. It's that simple. She speaks on behalf of Jerry Adams. She is Jerry Adams' puppet. Always has been, always will be. McCriskin is in bed with them all. So why people think that they can trust him in any shape or form is beyond me. But to have blatant evidence sitting in front of us of how sick this man is and how far he was prepared to go in order to stay a coroner, is so overwhelming that he has to step down. He has to be released. He has to be released from his duties. They have to release him. I'm telling
He
you,
should be
guy, because
he should be discharged with malice.
absolutely, Nathan, and not only that, he's not be taking on my daughter's inquest. I'm telling you, over my dead body. Over my dead body. He'll not be getting anywhere near. And if more people came forward who have had loved ones die, and Criskin's been involved in the inquest, in the anything, in the reporting, whether they had an inquest or not, whether you feel something wasn't right, something suspicious, come forward. Come forward. Because the more people come forward, then the more numbers that we can put into the hands of a legal team and say, well, there's the many people that came forward, and this man's getting JRs. Now, I have asked my legal team. I says, would you please find out exactly how many judicial reviews have been taken out against McCriskin from he became coroner? Because I think that's very important. And I think that's information that we are all entitled to. And I think that it's them kind of questions that's very important and need answered, because it's them type of questions that are being ignored.
Yeah, I
And
think we should all. I think the public should be entitled to have performance records on every single public authority and
yeah,
public official. Personally, I mean,
yeah,
if you're going to do a job for the public, like you say, you should be open, transparent. Everything's fair. I
yeah,
mean, obviously, there's personal information stuff like that can't be, but it's things that you say. If a coroner's been prosecuted for malfeasance or misconduct, then that should be public knowledge. The public should be able to get that and say, right, can we trust him? Can we not? It should be a case. Not being funny, it
yeah,
surprises. It doesn't surprise me anymore, but it used to surprise me how many people that are trusted by the community, but don't, because the community don't know that these people have been done time and time and time again,
yeah,
and they're kept
yeah,
there to
Nathan. I
say, "Oh, but
often
this is
feel
things
like
like."
every day, I think how many organizations are actually in these communities and are actually for the kids, and are not just waiting on the next funding package
Oh
coming
yeah,
along.
I think a lot of that is. I mean, let's face it.
And,
Anybody who's ever had a job in their life, I know this. It's like you only get so many warnings before you just get sacked. Now,
yeah,
how many times do you need the final warning before you get sacked if you've been taken to court and stuff like that? It's like for us lot, it would never happen. You'd be gone before it even got to judicial
yeah,
review. Anywhere near that, you'd be fired from your job. So what is it's so special about these people? What is so different about these people that they are held to a different standard to either one of us? Why are they allowed to
they,
make massive, massive mistakes or on purposely perjure themselves, doctor documents, stuff like that, like a lot of what doctors do and stuff like that? If we go there, why are these people allowed to do this and time again? And apparently, it's not in the public's interest. As I said, whenever it's not in the public's interest. You can guarantee there's a crown authority that has done the same thing over and over and over and over again. They just don't want you to know about it in case you stop them.
I believe that the stuff that's in those files belong to Noah is very traumatic, and I believe there is a lot more to this whole thing. But as I said, they spent more time covering it up, trying to cover it up, than what they actually did looking into the whole death situation in the first place of this kid. And they thought that the people were going to go away. They thought this was just going to be some people that come out in arms and, give it this and give it that. But hey, no, Noah's Army's getting growing bigger and better by the day. People from across the world are putting his photographs. They have his posters everywhere, all over America, Canada, you name it, New Zealand, everywhere. People go on holiday, all over different parts of Spain. There's blue rocks and all the beaches all right across the world, big blue rocks where his name and all. Remember my Noah. I mean, you know, so this kid is known and loved and remembered by millions of people throughout the world. But yet these so-called you know, reptiles, I call them, are depriving us of any type of justice and further investigations into our kids' deaths. I know I'm not stopping, and I know these other mothers are not giving in. If anything, we're all only getting started. So either McCusker stands down, he either stands down and makes it easier on himself and everybody else, or he'll go out with a bang. I'll make sure he goes out with a bang.
This is
100%.
this is where we need the whole community dealing with these sort of things and being involved with these sort of things. We need to stop having everything split. And that's across the board, really, not just with the children. That's with law, everything. Because if people really get into this, it is all one big churning circles. Whether you're talking about social care, law, it's all actually a big part of the same spinning ball. It's just they
if I
separate it
said
and
if
make
you're
you
going to
think it's
threaten anybody, they'll be threatening the mother of that kid. Come and threaten them. Come and face the parents who are saying that kid was murdered. That mother's not saying the kid. We're saying it. Hundreds of people across Noah's Army are saying it. I mean, you can't. What are you going to do? Arrest all of us?
This is the thing. This
are
is
you going
where
to arrest
standing
us
up in
all?
numbers makes that impossible. So this is the thing, because the communities often leave parents or people that go through this. They leave them to themselves and go, like you say, it's like, oh, it's none of my business. It's nothing to do with me. But it is, like I said, it's like that World War II poem about when they come for so and so, I didn't say anything. When they come for so, I didn't say anything. Then when they come for me, there was nobody left to fight. I mean, it's the same as that. Eventually, I mean, we're not far off. They're bringing legislation now to take even more power away from parents. Literally, we are going to walk into a nanny state. So imagine, and most people listen to this and know that at some point we've all seen a case or heard of a case or been involved in a case where social service or the authorities have overstepped their authority, overstepped their job description, that lot, and pretty much committed crimes. This is only going to get worse unless we start standing up against all of this.
We're getting here now. Every couple of years, you'll get an article, somebody writing an article about it. But only every couple of years, you'll see a short article about it, and then boom, as you know, it's away again. And then it's up to the likes of us to get it out there, you know, concerning them lot and what they have been doing to families. And I think a lot more families are standing up to them a lot more now. They're letting them know their rights, so they're not terrorizing them as much as what they have been doing over these last few years. I've seen a lot more families are now standing up and saying, "Fuck you, enough's enough." You know, you've got my kids. What else have I to lose? These families aren't sitting like we timid mums afraid to open their mouths or afraid to ask. You know, can they change their contact date, or can they can they bring their kids certain things? You just get bullies. You get a lot of the bullies torturing these mums, and look how many mums this year have taken their own lives.
But the other thing I think happens, Trace, I mean, I've talked about people. I know you've done it with this case, but people have got to stop using the Human Rights Act because it's open to interpretation. And you do all the hard work, you put it in with the barrister, then he goes in, but then they rip it apart because they put a different interpretation on it. Your inalienable rights are set in stone. They can't touch them. They can't take them away from you.
They cannot be bought, transferred, or denied. Whereas your human rights, it actually says in the Human Rights Declaration, in the preamble, this is before we actually get into the document, it actually states that these rights are only to be taken into consideration. So when you go under human rights and you go into that court, the judge only has to consider your human rights. They're not guaranteed, like Gary says, like you're unalienable if it's the English spelling or inalienable if it's international spelling. They're not guaranteed. So this is the thing, and they're doing it now. They want to gut loads of stuff. They want to gut the human rights, and loads of people are fighting to keep it. This is where we're going to get screwed over, because the Human Rights Act actually
They're trying to
gives
scrap that,
less
or they're
rights.
not, aren't they?
But
They're
this
not
thing,
trying to scrap that, Nathan.
yeah, they're trying to scrap the human rights, but this is being done by design, because people are going to try and cling on to human rights because they think they're going to lose anything. But what they don't realise is the Human Rights Act actually gives you less rights than our unalienable rights under our Constitution and our law. They actually made a document that gave us less rights. They actually took them away, and now they're going to convince us that these rights were so great that we need to keep them and things like that. Which in turn is going to basically be us saying, right, we want rid of all of our rights apart from what you give us, and then they're going to turn around and say, but these are only to be taken into consideration. These are not guaranteed. You know what I mean? It's like that they're going to give and take away. They always do. They never give you something to see. And this is what people have got to understand as well. It's sort of like a lot of things, solicitors, barristers, that lot, they're not fighting for you. They're not.
Well, I think we maybe need to wrap this up on what we've been talking about tonight. But I definitely do think there does need to be another update, more catch-ups, because there's so, I mean, there's so much happening over here. There's so much happening over there with yourselves. There's so much going on, you know, with families outside the poverty line. I'm going to have to keep you up to date with McCriskin. I'm just hoping that enough people start to see this guy for what he is, and hopefully we can have him removed from these cases. And Justice Colton.
That's exactly the reason why it is in the public's interest.
Well, Justice Colton is the judge who has been, Justice Colton's been helping me with my cases, has been guiding me, who has been, you know, has been so fair in all avenues. He's becoming chief coroner, and I can't wait. I am delighted, because I know that he's already got a lot of input into our past, our history, what's happened, everything that's happened to Karina, what we've came through, you know, the hate crimes, the attacks on us, everything. And he has it all. And he's becoming chief coroner, and I am delighted. I'm like, yes, I cannot wait, because as chief coroner, he'll not be able to ignore this. And I've said to my legal team, please keep an eye out for Justice Colton becoming chief coroner. I says, because the minute I know that he is there, right up there as chief coroner, believe you me, then I will start making a lot more noise where McCriskin's concerned.
Oh yeah.
Before you go, have you got a link or anything you can give people to get onto? I mean, there was one. It's hashtag Mine Noah Donahue Foundation. Have you got a link that you can give people?
There's loads. There's quite a few, Gary. There's so many. There's the, let me see, where am I? I'm on a
Tracy, any links you've got, if you get them to us, I shall put them on this video when it goes out, so they're on the video, so people can just click on them.
We could tell them what it's about, see, and these are the links you need to get, and we can put them on the top of the video, so people, when they've watched the video, can click on the links and get involved. See.
And absolutely.
If you listen to this, share this, bring awareness. This is in the public's interest. It's all in the public's interest. This is our children. It takes a community to raise a child, whether you believe that or not. It's true. I mean, they're all our children. We should be looking out for each and every single one of them, as you'd expect your child to be looked out for. So, please start actually bringing awareness. Let's actually do something.
And never think that it can't be your child. You could wake up tomorrow and you could get a phone call. Your child's got missing on the way from school. Just let that sink in, and before you just poo-poo it and say, it ain't going to happen to me. It could very well happen to you at any time, at any day.
I can assure you, with all the cases I've been involved with.
Anytime I've said that, I'd be a millionaire. I'd be sitting here in a mansion right now.
Well, I can honestly say, with all the cases I've been involved with, it's involved social things like that. It doesn't matter what walk of life you are. If they think they have a way, because it boils down, a lot of it basically is cash for kids, but there's a darker side to it as well. They will go for anyone. So don't think, like Gary says, don't think just because you've got a bit of money or you've got a paid job, or community thinks you're a decent. Or the community think you're a decent person. These people won't destroy you, because they will, because that's what they do. They go in, they destroy your life, they pull it apart and see what gets put back together again, and then they act on that. That is their MO. That is what they do, and they'll do it to anyone. I can give you a list of masses of people that are well-to-do and all that lot who have had their kids taken.
Yeah, well, I think we need to wrap this up because it's
Mm.
already over 2 hours long, and
Time to
we
stand up.
want people to listen to it and get the word out there and realize and understand what it's about. But we will do another updated one, hopefully in the next week or so. If I can give you a better update on, you know, my situation, what's going on, maybe, and we'll get an update on the other families who's successfully took JRs before the courts, and hopefully we knock this this coroner right off the bench, because a bench that he doesn't deserve to be on, and he shouldn't be on. So, and that's what my main focus here is, to let people know that this man has been doing this for way, way, way longer before we ever came along, and he ever made us a target. But this man's been targeting families for a long time, and I think it's about time it was all brought to the forefront, all brought out, and him removed from every
without a
single case
doubt.
connected.
We need these
Every
things to
single
happen.
case connected, definitely. Thank you very much, Nathan, for
No,
hosting
thank you.
this tonight.
No,
And
thank
giving
you
us
for
the
coming. Anytime you want to come on
opportunity.
for an update, just let us know and we'll arrange it. And can I just say again for Pete's like, if you do recognise any of these names, if your case relates to this, or you even think it may do, or there may be some links, please, Tracy Morris, Nathan Kirkden, Gary Clarke, if you get in contact with one of us, it'll be in complete confidence. It will not go any further than the people it needs to. But please come forward. Let's start actually sort of getting some justice for these people, please, and
Absolutely.
yourselves.
And
Come forward, speak
especially
about it.
justice for Noah. Justice for
Yep.
Noah. I mean, that kid went to you know, amazing school. He had amazing friends. He was the most amazing kid in the world. And you know what's the most killer? He was an only child. So his mother had no other children. He was her only child. He was her absolute world. And they just thought that they could come and just take that away, just wipe that out overnight.
That is the problem. This is the power they think they have over everyone. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, as long as we're alive, not in our watch. That's
Exactly.
one thing.
And this is the thing, even though we are very few of us, there is some of us really actually taking it to the system. And this is what many other people have to do. You have to find it within yourself to actually take it to the system and help people take it to the system, because this very phrase, not in the public's interest, is because all you people shy away from people like us when we tell you things. You just go, it's nothing to do with me. And then you're not interested. So they say the public are not interested. So it's not in their interest. Make it so you're interested. Make it so they know it's in the public's interest.
They've
Let's
heard it. I mean,
eliminate their excuse.
you can see, I mean, them posters, that was the big march last week. Even the police cars were getting literally, their windows were just plastered with Noah's posters right across the windows, right across. That's Noah's mum with him. But these people come out in their thousands and thousands. The city streets, Belfast town city centre, was all the streets were just packed out, and that's what's needed, and that's needed everywhere. That's needed everywhere to stop these people in authority having the power over our children, having the power over what they think that we are entitled to know about them and what we're not.
That is
And if
exactly it.
not,
This is why they get
if Noah's mum wants to ever get anything out of Tracy, you know we're here to. We'll soon, no problem, put it out for her.
I mean,
If
they're
she wants
hassling that woman at the minute, telling her, you know, you can't be saying, you can't be using the word murder, you know. But we're using we've used that word. Fiona's never used the word murder, and she's had plenty of interviews, and she has said, I know something really bad happened to my child, and I need answers. And nobody's giving her fucking any answers at all, other than more excuses in order to keep it covered up, and more bullshit after bullshit. And there's only so much bullshit any mother out there will take, but to start hitting her and attacking her with the media, where the papers is concerned, that's not going to wash, because she's got too many people that has her back.
This is why I'm saying, though, if she wants to put a different spin on it, like with Joseph and Bobby, when we went to see Joseph and Bobby, they went everywhere. They got treated really poorly, but we got their
Yeah.
message out, so it can be done. That's all I'm saying.
That's
If
correct.
whenever
That's
she's
correct.
ready.
This is the thing, is that, and because I was saying this to Joseph, this is the thing. It's like when they first come to us, nobody would touch them with a barge pole. Nobody would. Nobody want to hear them out anything. And it turns out, like you said, Tracy, it's one of the worst cases I've ever heard. And I haven't even heard all of it, but it's one of the worst cases I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, well, the thing is, like,
I remember doing my first interview with Bobby, and I remember I had to get up and leave the room. I was traumatized. I cried on my knees like a baby. I remember that. I was disturbed. I was disturbed by what happened to those two and what they've been through. And I think I left poor Kevin, my partner in crime, Kevin Weaver. I think I left him hanging on the radio station with him, and it's as well he was there to keep them, to keep him entertained and continue talking, because I fell apart. I fell
yeah,
apart listening to their story.
it's not easy, but together we will find strength. It's like you say, it's like when the things come together we'll find strength. It's like Noah's mum, it's like she's got a lot of people supporting her. That's going to go a very long way. When you've got more people supporting you than it's attacking you, it makes a massive difference. Massive difference.
And
this
then
is
there
why
you
we're
have
doing these support groups.
McCriskin. There you have McCriskin telling everybody that Noah's inquest will have a jury, but he'll be picking the jury. Sure, what good's that?
Exactly.
No, it
I
shouldn't
mean,
be doing that. That's awful.
yeah, it's exactly what you said, though,
You
Tracy.
tell me how that can
That's a
even
conflict of
happen.
interest. Yeah, that's a conflict of interest as far as I'm concerned.
Straight away.
But
Straight
no, but
away. So you tell me how.
anytime you want to come back on, and if Noah's Mum wants to come on and
Yeah.
sort of tell a story of things out and get us on, of course, more than willing to facilitate that. More than willing. And like I said, me and Gary have always done it. We try and, this Tracy, we try and do our best to try and
Absolutely.
give these people platform and support them, because it needs to happen. This
Mhm.
is not a choice.
Yeah.
This is a case of we have to do this. It's one of them. But right, we shall wrap it up then. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on and telling your story. Can't thank you enough. I've told you this before. You're an inspiration to me. How brave you are. How long you fought things out. It's like I've been through a lot of cases and things like that, but it's like you're an inspiration to me. That's it to me. Taught me quite a few things
Thank
actually
you.
along the way about social services and bits like that. So it's like I said, and this is what we need. If we're all conferring, if we're all sharing information, makes it a lot easier. It really does.
Absolutely, it does. It was lovely speaking to you, Nathan. Thank you. Thank you, Gary, for coming on and doing this with me tonight.
I've always got your back, that choice. Always.
Absolutely. And ditto, partner, always have your back, always.
Yeah. So
I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
No problem.
But any time you want to do an update, just let us know and I'll sort it.
Absolutely, and hopefully we'll get any updates from this, and hopefully we even if it brings one more family forward, who has issues with McCriskin, well then it was well worth it. Yeah.
It's not just that.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not just about getting him there. If we can bring another, just like you say, just one family forward to get support and actually be able to heal themselves a bit and get through this, that's going to be a big thing.
It is indeed.
It'll be a massive thing.
Anybody watching this video, if you don't feel confident enough to contact us, if you want to leave us your details in the comments under the video, if you are watching it, just give it and we'll get in touch with you. We'll help you. That way we'll get in contact with you.
Okay, thank you guys. Good night and God bless.
Tracy, take care. Well done. You're an inspiration to us all. You really are.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, lads. Love yous and leave yous over a night. Night, God bless.
Night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Tracy Morris, Gary Clarke. I've been Ivan Geffen. Thank you for tuning in and stay safe, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Bye.